Okay, so I made a little wonky presentation. Oops, my bad. I don't know how to do this. Cool. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Webrings, or Site Spiral, as we decided to call it. And they're basically like, I think they're interesting because I see, and like I think this is like something that I've been thinking about, but I also see a lot of other people discussing like, you know, issues of like not really feeling super good about being online on platform like Instagram, but also feeling, I think a lot of people stay on it because they don't want to feel alienated from their communities, and they want to be able to like be in contact with other people in the way that Instagram allows us to. And so in the fall, I started thinking about this thing that I like saw when I was online. That was like when I was like, I don't know, like a preteen, and I don't really know how I got, like, I feel like, okay, sorry. Yeah, it was like kind of like almost like a chance, like weird mistake that I saw it, because I think it was like mostly gone from most of other places of the internet, but I stumbled on this. And so the Webrings were like those, so if you're like trying to imagine what the web used to look like before like what we're used to now, like one thing that's kind of interesting to think about is like how it was not, it was definitely more complicated to like access information. You can like go on Google, Google didn't exist, like search engines were like not really a thing. And like, I think from, you know, like people would have to like, from what I read, like people would have to like kind of register their website in like an internet phone book, and that could take a few weeks. So it was just like a lot of lag and like finding things that you were interested in, or like research or anything. It was like a little bit like going to a very slow library. And so what started happening is that there's a few layers to this, but so the first thing is like people were like publishing websites that were like pretty basic, and like it was just like, you know, like the internet was this like kind of funny place to be where you could like be yourself, and it was like very aspirational in that way. And that was possible because of, well, not just because of that, but like one of the reasons I think people started understanding the internet and interacting with it was because of this website GeoCities, which kind of like linked the idea of like being online to like the idea of like being in real space. Like, for example, like you would be able to like navigate this like map of like where things, like, I don't know, like things were like thematically placed in the world, connected to like big ideas that were connected to those spaces. Like maybe if you had a website that talked about Hollywood content, like TV shows, then you would be going to Hollywood to like have your little website. And that's kind of like one way that people found each other. But then some people came up with this thing that they called the Webring, which was basically a way to like link all of those websites that had a very similar interest into like this like circular network that you could just like, you would hop on a website and then just like you could just click and keep finding something else. So according to Wikipedia, a Webring is a collection of websites linked together in a circular structure and usually organized around a specific theme, often educational or social, and they were popular in the 1990s and early 2000s, and particularly among amateur websites. Yeah, so this thing, the Webring, like as a corporation, because it was like made to be a company, was like, I think created in 1995, and then later on the website that I mentioned, GeoCities, like bought it. Well, it was like a part of like a bigger acquiring thing, but they bought it and then it became part of GeoCities, which I think really popularized it. But then GeoCities was bought by Yahoo, which kind of killed the whole thing because they did a very terrible transition, and people just kind of lost interest, I think. And so by the early 2000s, there's just not much interest, and Yahoo just like totally stopped supporting them, and you can't really make a Webring on Yahoo anymore. And because of that, you can't really, you don't see them online anymore, which I think is why it's so funny to me that I saw this, because I was a bit younger than all this stuff, but like somehow there's this weird corner of the internet where I used to hang out as a teen that was like still using Webrings for like maybe the first year or two that I was there. And I was like, oh, cool, what's this thing? But yeah, it was like mostly extent. And this kind of like, those little graphs kind of give you a bit of an idea of what, like I feel like it's a funny, but like how the Webring works, which is just like there'll be, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but, and I'm not reading comments, but I hope you can. And so basically you have this like little website here, which is kind of this invisible website, and it's like responsible for holding the whole network together. And then I don't know if like one of these websites goes offline, then it was just gonna bridge that gap so that the whole thing doesn't, you know, like the ring does not break, and you can like keep navigating between them. So that's kind of like a basic, like what does a Webring look like in terms of like concrete terms. Yeah, and so these places were just like very, I mean, it's funny. I think when you look up Webrings, you find a lot of these like kooky graphics of like Backstreet Boys Webring or NSYNC, and then like some super like nerdy fun things of like maybe communities that like wanted to find each other online. One thing that I was very interested in and that I one day found, you know, it's like doing research and I lost a trace, so that's kind of unfortunate, but I was always wondering, like, do people use, I'm sure people must have used Webrings for like other things than just like their love for NSYNC, like, you know, things that were a bit deeper. Not that there's anything wrong with like liking a boys band, but I was just like, I'm sure somebody did, you know, yeah, that there were other things. And I was looking through this website called Cameron's World, which is like an archiving of all of the GeoCities. Like when GeoCities went down, a bunch of people got together and tried to save as much as data as they could, and then they put it online. And so a bunch of artists have taken that as material to create kind of like nostalgic rendering of the web. And one of them, which is, you can see on this website called cameronsworld.net, I think, or .org, I forget. I can type it in the description after, or in the comment box. And yeah, and then I found a trace of like basically like there's this trans woman who had like a website, and she made this like trans Webring, which I thought was super amazing. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find it. I've been looking for it for a month after, so that's really sad, but I'm still trying to find it. Yeah, so that's a little bit of what was going on in there. Yeah, and so I talked about this a little bit earlier already, but I do think this is a very interesting, and like, I just think, you know, it's a form that I think has like a lot of potential to, you know, I think help us like maybe try to figure out other ways to be in community online. And part of this project is that we want to try and make the building of the actual Webring, not just like the website, as transparent as possible, so that if other people are interested in recreating the structure beyond this workshop, it will be eventually available online, so that you can, I don't know, like take it and build a Webring with your friends about anything that you want, or like strangers online that you like have, or like online friends that you have like common interests with. Yeah, and this spiral name was also just because we called it, so the other thing is like we actually can't use the word Webring because it's like a trademark term. So we like kind of thought about it and we're like, oh, site spiral. I think that came from Jules being like, oh, we could call it a site loop. And I was like, that's great, but I am kind of obsessed with spirals. I think they're like very magical shapes. They're everywhere. And yeah, there's this really fun Instagram that I put in the slide because I'm literally obsessed with it, that has this whole like, you know, it's like a gathering of encyclopedic information around the spiral. And I think I was talking about it with the person who runs it, and we're like, wow, it's so wild. Like this, the shape of the spiral just like literally draws people in, and like it's like at the core of everything. Like your heart is an elliptical spiral. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking about spiral, but yeah. And then I wanted to talk about this also. I think it's interesting to think about also like kind of like how we connect on an emotional level, and like on an like in how we like maybe romanticize the early days of the web, because it was like, you know, because it was like this new space. There's a lot of things that we experience now that we find alienating that weren't there at the time. I think a lot of people, you know, would agree that it used to be a lot more earnest, and maybe like it would allow, like it was allowing for people to be a bit more creative, though within like pretty tech, like there's like a lot of, you know, restraint with like how much, just in terms of like how much space the internet could take at the time. But you know, it's just like now I think a lot of, we all like have this understanding that what we see online isn't necessarily real, because we all like project this thing. And I think looking back at a lot of older websites, like there's so many websites that are like so earnest and like sometimes in like almost a very painful way. But it's like super sweet to think that this is like a way that, you know, this was a thing. And yeah, also like I don't know, you could go on YouTube, or like this is a bit later, but you could go on YouTube and there weren't ads, and like it wasn't like there were like a bunch of like giants that were owning, I don't know, like Google, Amazon, and all those big companies that no one really likes, were owning everything, and selling our data, and we don't quite know what they're doing with it. But also, I just did also want to put a reminder that even if I think it's like easy to idealize that, like I don't think the internet was actually super accessible at the time. Like it was a pretty expensive thing to have a computer in your house. And I think being like, just like from trying to kind of like get a sense and understanding of like how search engines or like some sort of like research capabilities was working on the web before, it's pretty complicated. Like I don't think anybody like any normal person could just like be like, oh, I'm gonna get on the web and look this up. Like there's like, I found this like article from 1992 that was trying to explain this like search engine, and it was like a little crazy, to the point of like, oh, if you're entering your field like in a specific way, then you have to like enter it with like uppercase and lowercase, otherwise the computer won't like differentiate. And if you're like looking for trees with lowercase, and you want, well, you'll be missing all the content that's like tree with uppercase. Yeah, and then I mean also, I guess, and this is exciting because I think Jules is going to touch a little bit about this on the website, but it wasn't necessarily always super accessible also for people who had like different physical needs, or yeah, it's just like if you had like visual impairments, like I don't know, you've probably seen some of those like I guess like aesthetic, like you're running back to those years where it's like the colors are just so crazy. And actually I know that I kind of did that accidentally in the graphics, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so just some things to keep in mind. And I'll just finish this saying that, yes, we have a call out for basically like anybody who's connected to Concordia in some way. Like it doesn't, you don't have to be an undergrad, you don't have to be a student, you can just be like an alumni or staff or like anything really. I think we're just kind of interested in having as much perspectives and like different voices as possible. And we're gonna so we're asking people to submit their own webpage, and you can kind of like read over the call out more in details if you're interested. And yeah, and then we'll put everything in Webrings, like in a little site spiral. And we're also going to be offering tech support through this, because there's one element of the site spiral that we don't currently have, that we're in the process of making, that people will be asked to add to their website. So we'll be following up for that. And then we also set up a Discord channel if you have any questions and you need help with an issue that you're encountering while you're trying to put your website together. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna, yeah, Jules, if you want to start, and if everybody's ready, that's gonna be you now.
I will be the tech support person for you. You don't actually have to spotlight me.
Sorry.
Because it'll do that automatically when I start sharing the presentation. Yeah, I'll be the tech support person for Webrings. Debugging is a pain in the ass, less with HTML, but it can be, yeah, it can be a bit just like confusing when you're not used to it. So I can be around for you to ask questions, because sometimes you're like, yeah, sometimes a really non-intuitive thing happens, and because it's not intuitive to a human but intuitive to a computer, it may not be immediately apparent. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen and let's get going. Okay, I'm sharing my whole screen, so I really hope nothing embarrassing happens. Okay, so yeah, why do we want to learn HTML? As Flora mentioned, for a few reasons, yeah, why do we want to learn HTML? We want to learn HTML, one, because it's really fun, B, because it's really easy, C, because it's really the fundamental kind of skeleton that most web pages are. Most web pages these days don't actually use HTML. They're built on frameworks. So if you've ever used WordPress or Tumblr or like Webflow, you probably haven't used Webflow if you're taking an intro to HTML workshop, but a lot of sites are built on frameworks, which basically just means that the underlying code is kind of written for you, and you're given what's called a, you're given a GUI, or you're given a UI, which is just like a, it's like a control panel for you to like click and drag things. So like, you know, Photoshop is a UI, like, yeah, the Tumblr interface is a UI. You're given an interface and you're not actually writing the code itself. But yeah, so yes, on the one hand, the web is really easy to use these days. On the other hand, like my personal little hobby horse is that the web should actually require a tiny little bit more knowledge to use, because the more knowledge you have, the more power you have, and the more capacity you have to kind of, you know, resist getting sucked into some of these structures that we are sucked into today, like Zoom user entered the waiting room, welcome. Yeah, some of the structures that we're overwhelmingly living in today, which is, you know, kind of social media dominance, just kind of platform dominance. Everything that we use is really, really, every platform that we kind of, that has become the like site of our, you know, social interaction, of our work, of everything is in a word, is owned. So, you know, there are links with capitalism here, there are links with, you know, land ownership and leasing. I'm not going to go into that here, but HTML is basically a way of just carving out your space, carving out a space where, like, you know, it's beginning to have some kind of autonomy and some kind of sovereignty online, and it's a capacity to actually kind of like build things with a lot more intentionality and a lot more control than what you otherwise have. Yes, it's a little bit more, it's not harder, it just takes more time. Crucially, also, HTML is not coding, it's not programming, it's a markup language. So it's basically just a way to structure words and images and web pages, and so that it's legible to a browser. It's not actually programming. Sorry to burst your bubble. None of you are learning to code today. You're just learning to mark things up. But that's fine, because coding is a kind of, you know, programming is, it's a different structure of thought. This is just a different way of structuring language you're already used to, which I hope actually makes this a little bit less intimidating for people who are a bit confused. HTML Energy is a site run by an artist called Laurel Schwust that I really like. And I agree with both of these statements. Another upshot of writing HTML is just kind of the immediate payoff of seeing something that you've written actually have an effect in your browser. So you'll see when you start, we're gonna have a couple little workshop sections where you're gonna start putting things onto a little web page and opening it up and seeing it work. And seeing things work is probably the most rewarding part of any kind of like under the hood computer related activity, because posting to Instagram, you're like, obviously a post is going to work, whereas there's always this kind of like this space between you saving a file, whether it's HTML or like JavaScript or Python or otherwise, and kind of sticking it in the browser and seeing that it doesn't work. And so when things work, it's fantastic. And HTML is really calming and just really fun to write. Yes, so what we're going to start off with is file structure. So everyone's familiar with files and folders because you use a computer. I assume you're familiar with files and folders. I hope no one's doing this workshop on their phone because they're gonna need to use a computer. And just before we start, can everyone interject? Do you have a text editor? Have you downloaded a text editor? So I linked in the resource sheet to Atom. That's a basic text editor. Does everyone have that? Ooh, chat's popping off. Yes. Awesome. You can actually write HTML in like your notes app. It will be fine. It will read the HTML as long as you save it not as a TXT, but as an HTML. The upshot of having a text editor is that you're going to be doing things like you're going to be putting things in like element markers called tags. And what a text editor does is basically it just automatically kind of highlights those in different colors, and like we'll just, if you have like a missing end tag or something, it'll often kind of have a little way of indicating that. So basically, the way to structure your file is the one file that you absolutely need is your index.html. So the file name here is kind of non-negotiable, because when your browser opens up your root file, so here in this example, I have this example file called my sites. So let's say I have multiple website folders. They're all going to be in my sites. You don't need a folder that big. You do need a site folder. So my site folder in this case would be not now. This is because one of the like test websites is notnow.life. If you clicked on the resource link, that's where it is. So this is my broader file, and yeah, I shared everything. So I'm just gonna, oh my God, sorry. Escape. So yeah, so this is just showing you the actual folder. So in my desktop, I didn't organize my folder is not as organized as this. So I have I'm on my desktop. Where is my test folder? This is my test folder. So this is the big folder. And then inside this, I have my index.html, and I have a bunch of pictures that I didn't organize, and I have my stuff. So that's what that looks like. Yeah, cool. So a good rule of thumb is keeping things separate so that you're not just looking at a big mess of things. So if you have a bunch of images, you want to keep them in a little image folder. If you have scripts, so if you add any JavaScript, which basically just makes your web page interactive. I'm not going to be going into JavaScript in this workshop because it's a level of complexity, and you can easily follow tutorials online to do really simple things. Yeah, so if you have scripts, you're going to keep them in the scripts folder. If you have any styles, usually you will have styles. I'm going to teach you how to style things. You're going to keep them in a style folder. Having a style folder is useful in case you just want to make multiple CSS files, which if you have a lot of different pages, and if I have like 5 HTML pages and they all have a lot of different styles, then I might just separate them into 2 different CSS files, just to keep things simple, because at a certain point you don't want to be scrolling up and down a page every time you want to find like your style for one paragraph. Anyways, and then you're going to have your HTML pages, and if you want to put them in a little HTML folder, you can. I just kind of left them at the top. So the one file that you can't just name whatever you want is the index.html, because that's the file that your browser is going to be looking for to display as your home page. And then if you have any other pages, like I have a resource page, you can just name them whatever you want. So you can name them other page, you can name them you get the idea. You get the idea. Is this clear? Are there any questions so far?
So just to clarify, what, like basically each HTML file is like a new page?
Is a new page, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. There's something in the chat if you haven't had a chance yet. On to the next. Okay, so the fundamental components of an HTML page. This is the bare bones kind of what is going to be on each page, and then other content and tags are going to go in between all of these things, and I have highlighted the tags that match each other to just indicate that they go together. So when I'm talking about tags, I'm talking about a little name that's in between these 2, I don't know the name for this symbol, arrows. It's like you're holding a sandwich. So every HTML element, and I'm going to explain what an HTML element is on the next slide, has 2 tags. So there's one that starts the element and there's one that ends the element. And the one that ends the element always has a backslash to indicate that it is ending the element. So it's kind of like, it's kind of, what's a good metaphor? It's just a sandwich, you have one thing that starts it, you have the content, and then you have one thing that closes it. And it's just indicating that it's closed, that it's complete. If you forget this, your browser is going to get confused and something's going to go wrong on your web page. So first thing that you want to have on your HTML document is this doctype HTML. I'm gonna what I meant to do, I'm gonna link everyone this presentation because there are some links in here that will be useful, and also you can just copy this into your code if you want to follow along. I rarely write this stuff. I usually just go into an old HTML page, like copy it all and then delete everything that I don't want. And so I just have that. So I just do that each time. Where's my chat? There's my chat. Okay. Y'all can have that. It's yours. Okay, cool. So doctype HTML, what that does, it tells the browser what kind of document it is. So the browser, basically browsers read things line by line. They're not humans. They don't look at the page and see everything at once. They go line by line and read what's there. And every line gives them more information about what the next few lines should do and should look like. So doctype.html just tells the browser that this is an HTML document. And then you have the HTML, the 2 HTML tags. So everything that is between these 2 tags is HTML. The reason that these are here is that sometimes you might have something else, some other kind of language like PHP or something. I'm not going to go into that. It's boring and it's hard. But you might have that between doctype HTML and HTML. So anyways, everything between these 2 HTML tags is HTML. And then you have what's called a head. Now the head is information that doesn't appear to whoever views the page, but does appear to the browser. So you can't style any of this. You can't make anything. You can't style any of this. You can't make it look like anything, but it does give the browser information about how to present what's going to be in the body. So meta tags are actually meta tags are a kind of tag that's called like empty or void. They're called empty or void elements, which just means that you don't have to close them, but you also can't put little content in between them. We'll see that later. So a meta tag is it's like metadata. It's information about the page. So char set, that means character set, UTF-8. A character set is just what type of character your browser can display. UTF-8 is universal. So you can so that means that whatever you type will display properly. Different languages, you can type that in different characters like Cyrillic, kanji, emoji will show up. Whereas if you had a different character set, one that was kind of specific to the Latin alphabet, some things would just probably appear as boxes. I'm sure people with older phones I have an Android phone, so when my iPhone friends send me an emoji, sometimes I just get a box and I don't know what they're trying to express. Same deal if you put a character set that isn't UTF-8 and you type something in Japanese, the browser will be like, I don't know. So put that. Language, you'll often be writing in English, so it's just good to have that. This apostrophe should be the other way around. Sorry about that. Yeah, English US, this is for things like if you've ever opened a web page in a different language and Google has automatically offered to translate it for you, it knows what language it's in because the page has a meta tag containing that information. Meta name, viewport content width, this is just something that helps. This is just something that ensures that the web page will be scaled at a 100% level to whatever device it appears on. So this is a good thing for, screen resolutions are not consistent and nor are screen aspect ratios. So if someone's opening this on mobile, it'll help it be formatted. If someone's I have a really high resolution screen for no good reason. I have a high resolution screen and like a bad graphics card. So it doesn't make any sense. But basically when I open up things on my computer, they look really small a lot of the time, which is dumb. But adding this tag just helps things be scaled properly. So yeah, these are things that you don't have to think too hard about, just like copy them in. Title. So the title is if you have a bunch of tabs open, the title is the little tab, the text that's in the little tab. So if you kind of hover over your tabs with your mouse and sort of some text appears, that's the title. You can title it whatever you want. There aren't really conventions. You can also add kind of icon images. I think I get to that later in the presentation. And you can also add things like, other kind of properties, sorry, I keep going down here. What did I say? No, not that, sorry. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so meta elements, you can add things like, so instead of title, this might say name. You can do things like author and description. You can do things, yeah, descriptions are useful. These are all things that you can Google if you want to add more information to your meta tag, but basically the upshot of having more information in your meta tag is just being able to give more information, like snapshots of information for search engines. And if you're pasting links to things, like if you've ever pasted a link to Facebook or Discord or in an Instagram chat, a little bit of information will appear. Like it won't just be the link, it'll be the link and then you'll get like a box with a preview with an image and and some information. And that's basically all information that's been given somewhere in here. So it's just helpful if you want to be able to give the search engine more of a preview of the content of your page. Finally, links. So links in the head are, this is how you're going to link your CSS, which is how you're styling your page to your HTML. So this too, you don't need a closing tag because all the information is here. So you're going to put rel style sheet because the relationship is that it's a style sheet. This is just giving the browser information about what this link is. Href style.css. So if your style.css is in the same folder as your HTML page, you can just write it like this. If your CSS, if you did what I did up here and put your CSS in a styles folder, then I'm sorry I didn't write this. I was being dumb. I just copied directly from my web page, from my code page. You would put a you would say styles/style.css. Does that make sense to everyone? Here, I'll type it out in the chat what it should look like. So it would just look like that. Flora, I'll get to that. Will I get to that? Yeah, I can get to that now. HTML is, so Flora in the chat asked me to explain the difference between HTML and CSS. HTML is basically just the content of the page. CSS is what it looks like. So HTML is kind of what text is there, what images are there, really the skeleton. I've seen a bunch of little pictures online that are just like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and HTML is like the bones and JavaScript is like the muscles and then CSS is like the clothing. So it's basically that relationship. So if you've ever seen a web page that's literally just black Times New Roman on a white background and it's all like stuck to the edges of the page and it just goes right along, that's just someone writing in HTML and not bothering to put any CSS on it. You can also put CSS in your HTML document. I don't because it gets unwieldy and I just prefer to have everything in separate files. If you add JavaScript too, the JavaScript will also be in the head under a link. That's slightly different. And if you want to add JavaScript to your website later, you can ask me specifically and I can show you how to link it, but we're not going into JavaScript in this workshop. So all you're gonna need is text CSS. You'll also notice here, maybe you didn't notice, I just noticed, if you have this link, oh my God, I'm literally just gonna edit that right now. That's so dumb. Because if you are copy pasting that, then it's just not gonna work. So, stupid over here. There we go. This is called a property. Okay, sorry. This is, I'm gonna explain this in the next slide, so don't get confused. This is called an element, or like body, that's an element. This is called a property, and this is called a property value. And your property value needs to be between quotation marks. They can be double quotes or single quotes as long as they match. And what I just did was basically put a backwards single quote and then forget about the end single quote. So that might have caused a problem. And often if you're noticing problems on your web page, they will be issues as absolutely brain dead simple as like missing a quotation mark somewhere, which is annoying, but whatever. Okay. So yeah, this is just explaining an HTML element. So this is a paragraph element. I'll get to it next page, but basically paragraph elements are just what you're going to want to put your text between. So you have the opening tag and the closing tag. You have the whole element is the element including, including opening tag, closing tag, and content. And then you're going to have things that are called attributes. So attributes can be things like size. They can be things like classes and IDs, which I'm going to go into later. So this here is a class, and this basically just means that this is a name that you're giving to the elements so that you can refer to it later in CSS. What other types of things might you, yeah, I'll go into it. It's not super important. So these are some of the tags that are very, very basic that you are going to be using at some point. So header tags. Header tags indicate that something is a title of some kind. There are many header tags. You can go from H1 to about like H6 or H7, and they get smaller every time. So think of it kind of like if you were writing a paper, you would have like the main, you would have the main title of the paper, and that might be an H1, and it's going to be, it doesn't have to be the biggest. You can style it to be as big as you want, but it will be the most important title. And then say you have a bunch of, actually, no, sorry, I'm going to use a book metaphor. So you have a book, you have the title of the book, and that's the H1 because it's the most important title. And then you have the title of each chapter, and that would be an H2 because it's slightly less important than the main title, but it's still more important, or not more important, but you know, it's a way of organizing the content that's coming after it. And then if you have little titles within the chapters, that might be like an H3 or something. So it's basically just a way of creating a content hierarchy. Using quotation marks, I'm not trying to like talk down to anyone, but yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, it's a way of creating a content hierarchy. And what's useful, what's useful in creating, content hierarchy is useful for search engines. So a lot of you are probably going to be creating like random art websites and don't really care about SEO, which is search engine optimization. But if you're creating a website and you do want it to be like easily searchable by Google, and you do want, like say if you're creating a web page about, you know, a topic, and you want Google and someone, if you're creating a search engine about dogs and you have a subsection on borzois and someone searches borzoi, then maybe if you have an important section on borzoi, you want to put that under an H2 so that Google is like, okay, I know this website is mostly about dogs, but they have an important section on borzoi, so I'm going to direct this person that just searched about borzois to this larger dog website. Yeah, I I don't usually use headers, but that's because up until 2 weeks ago, I didn't actually know that they were important for SEO. I usually just use like bold tags or whatever, and which is bad practice. And if you want your site to be indexable and like easily readable, you should use headers to organize your information. It's not only important for search engines, it's also important for people who use screen readers. So people who use screen readers, screen readers, you know, it's people who have low vision, people who just get easily exhausted. There's a whole list of reasons that someone might use a screen reader, but crucially, it's it helps the screen reader like differentiate between the importance of information, and that kind of adds to the roundness of the experience for someone who is using a screen reader. So yeah, if you do have a bunch of kind of like text-oriented content organized, it is good practice to use headers. Is everyone following so far? Does this like make sense? Yeah. Cool. So paragraph, basic paragraph, whatever text you're going to be putting in is probably going to go between the paragraph. Like you can just like make a div and put text in it, and that'll be fine. But it's better practice to use paragraphs, mostly because you can style them easily, and it's just good to be able to refer to things by the type of thing they are, rather than just making a bunch of general elements. And like, yeah, paragraphs, once you end a paragraph, it'll also insert a little page break. under it, which, oh, I actually didn't put this in, but this is also an important, oops, sorry. If you're within a paragraph and you want to insert a page break, you just put that after the end of the line. So that stands for break, and it creates a little break. I feel like I should be doing a live example, but I made this whole PowerPoint, so I'm just going to use the PowerPoint. An image. An image tag is, so does it make sense to you when I say that everything, yeah, because I explained on the previous page. So yeah, these are all elements. These are elements usually take an opening tag and a closing tag. Images do not take a closing tag. So they're called a void or an empty element, because you don't need to sandwich them, because all of the information is saved within the, is kind of contained between this and this. Yeah, so this needs the source attributes. So this is something where, like a paragraph is an element where you don't need to put any attributes in between this, this guy and this guy. You can just put it there. Whereas an image, you do need to add some extra information about what the image is. Why did I just think it would be useful to not have that? So you'd usually have like image, src equals like my image dot gif, or if you're structuring your files right, you would have it in images, my image dot gif close tag. And then maybe you would have like size equals 300 px, but I don't really like adding sizes and stuff in my HTML. I usually just add it in my CSS. So yes, this can be a link to a natively hosted image or an image hosted somewhere else. So if you're saving images inside your file structure, you can link to it like this, because the file is on your computer, and when you upload everything to your host, it will be hosted on your host, and the file structure will still apply, so you can just refer to it like this. If you're hosting, if you're, oops, sorry. I actually can't see my tabs because the Zoom thing is, okay, so, sorry. So if you want to link to an image that's just incredible, incredible work, Google. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, let's hit German Shepherd. I'm just pulling up an image here. I'm really sorry about this. Okay, let's copy the why not German Shepherd stats. Okay, so we have the copy image address. Yeah. So if you want to link to this particular image, you would do, oops. img src, which stands for source. What a link we got there. That's annoying. That's an annoying link, but it will link to that image. So it's usually a good idea to download and store images and stuff that you want to use on your desktop, even if a link is kind of easily available, simply because you're not hosting this link. It's hosted somewhere on the internet. So the upshot of just linking to images is that if you're running out of space, the free host we're going to be using has a gigabyte of space. So if you're hosting a bunch of really big images, which you shouldn't be doing because there's no point, web images usually want to be pretty small. Yeah, but if you're, if you're running out of space and you don't want to like upload a bunch of files, then you can just link to external files. So that's why you might want to just, use web links. On the other hand, if someone takes this beautiful German Shepherd picture offline, then people are going to show up to your page and they're just going to get a sad little, one of those sad little placeholder squares and maybe some description if someone bothered to add a description, but they're not going to know what the image is. So that's the upshot of downloading images and linking to them natively. And okay, embarrassing that it's now off the screen, but maybe we can fix that. So the A tag, the A stands for anchor, I believe, and look at that, that would mess you up too. Okay. A stands for anchor. This is how you create hyperlinks. So if you're making a web page that doesn't have a lot of JavaScript on it, and this is how most web pages were made, you know, back in the beautiful GeoCities days that Flora was talking about, most websites were basically just page and link based, and hypertext was something that, you know, people who were writing about the early web are really, really excited about, because it's so fundamentally normal to us now. But in the early internet, the fact that you could just interrupt static text with something that brought you to a totally different location was like, whoa, reality wormhole, was super crazy. So yeah, which is just to say that it's a really easy way of adding kind of dynamism to a web page that's otherwise static. So this is going to be really important. You're going to be using this a lot. This too is not just something that you can type whatever in and expect it to work. So if you paste your link here, like if you paste your link here, it's not going to work. You're just going to get text that says www.whatever.com, and it's not going to bring you anywhere. What you need is, yeah, you need an href here too. And then you need to put the href between quotation marks. So this little here, and then you have a target.blank. I'll explain this later, which basically just opens the link in a new tab. And then you have your link between the two, between the opening and closing. You have the text of the link between the opening and closing tag. And that will mean that you don't just get an ugly link address. You can kind of editorialize what you want your link to say. So this element here, this is a whole element, will on your web page create what will create this. So yeah, it'll bring you here. Sorry, I keep drawing this down, but yeah, so you get a little redirect and then you get a clean link. Videos are a bit more intensive to, yeah, whatever, I'll just keep it not in presentation mode so that if I need to edit on the fly, I can do that. Videos are a bit more of a pain to, those are also good to put in your video tag. Videos are a bit more of a pain to create because you need to nest another element inside. This is the whole video element, and then you need to nest a source element in between these tags where like text might otherwise go. So yeah, this you can probably just do in CSS, but it's good to kind of designate it from the fly, just because videos are kind of bigger elements that the sooner you can give your browser information about how to style it, the better. Loading times will be lower. So yeah, so for a video, you give it maybe a width attribute, maybe a height attribute. You don't do what I've done throughout this presentation, which is to do backwards things. That's, I blame Google automatic styling. And this is another reason to use HTML, is that all this automatic styling that is applied is left up to you and not fucking whoever's controlling your framework. Yeah, so you put some size attributes, and then this is another attribute. So this means that the video will start playing automatically when the page loads. Loop means that it will not stop playing once it's looped through. So if you have a really short video and you just want to play it on a loop, if you're using a video as your background or something, this is a good thing to put in. And controls will put a little like play, pause, whatever on the video that you're automatically playing. So this is useful if your video, once again, is natively hosted. So if you're hosting this on your desktop in your file structure, this is how you embed a video. If you're embedding a video from YouTube or something, or from Vimeo or from whatever, you don't actually need to use this code. Usually you can just go to like YouTube. Oh God, this is gonna be embarrassing. I'm actually gonna go to Vimeo because I don't know what's gonna be my YouTube recommended. It's probably gonna be a lot of HouseMD. Okay, weird. Don't know why this popped up, but anyways, so yes, so say you want to put this Vimeo video on your webpage, you would go to share and you would go to embed. And this embed is just a little snippet of HTML that you can copy. So you just copy all of this and you paste it wherever you want it to appear in your code, in your HTML. So that's an easy way of doing that without doing this. And finally, the div tag. The div tag is super useful. It's basically just a box, but it's a box that you can put other things in and it lets you organize things easily. HTML is fundamentally kind of structured in a box-like way. Usually it's a stack of boxes that go one underneath the other, but it's also boxes inside other boxes and potentially boxes next to other boxes. So that can be a useful way of thinking about it. Other structural tags that might be useful. Yeah, these are kind of like if you want sort of like an easily navigable page, if you have multiple pages. I'm not going to explain all of these because I have linked to the page that they appear on. Yeah, just a crucial thing about writing HTML is that you don't have to remember all of this. I don't remember all of this. When I'm writing a web page, if I'm a bit tired, I'm literally going to Google, how do you embed images again? And it's going to tell me right away. So don't be stressed out by all the different tags. You don't have to remember them. The internet is always there at your disposal to answer all of your dumb questions. I will be there at your disposal and I will never call your questions dumb because I have them constantly as well. So yeah, these are a lot of things, but you can also Google at any time, like, how do I put an image on a page? And you'll get redirected to W3 Schools or something. I've also, in the resource kind of page that I made, I've linked to 2 great websites for learning HTML and web pages are the developer Mozilla.org. This has like a really, really great, just kind of several page, runs you through fundamental elements. I actually based a lot of this presentation off the kind of the information and order that was given in that document. And then you have W3 Schools, which has some basic kind of tutorials and information, but most crucially just acts as like an encyclopedic kind of reference. So I'll actually bring that up right now. Sorry, I'm ignoring the chat right now. Yeah, so like this is just the W3 Schools kind of like, actually, I'm just gonna go to HTML. So yeah, this is like all this sidebar here is basically just information about everything that you could possibly want to put on your web page and elements and stuff like that. So headings, this is what I was talking about before. It explains it, etc. So this is a really good site to look through, but also if you have a question, it'll generally redirect you to this. So how to add video HTML. Yeah, immediately brings you to W3 Schools. And it gives you some information about that. And most of this code here, you can just fucking copy paste and slap it into your code. And that's how the internet works. Okay, so yeah, that's other structural tags. So if you want to make a navigation bar, sidebar, footer, stuff like that. Tags that affect content. So these are inline tags. So all of these tags up here, all of these elements, they basically create content that is placed on a new line. These are tags that affect content that is within this. So mostly these are related to text. So mostly these are going to be like within 2 paragraph tags, so 2 P tags. So an M is just a way of emphasizing some words in a paragraph. So whatever you put between, I'm just going to put a little example here. I put in a little example down here. Cool. So yes, this would be a line within your P, and you see that who is between 2 M tags. So you just kind of interrupt interrupt the kind of the text that's in your p tag with these m tags, and it italicizes it for you. Strong does the same, only it bolds text. So there are two other tags that do this as well, which is I and B, which is just kind of italics and bold. Why do they do the same thing? This is also a screen engine optimization thing, so an SEO thing and a screen reader thing. So yeah, put it down here. Semantic versus presentational. Presentational basically just means that all that it does is affect what people who are looking at the screen can see. So if I'm looking at the screen, I can see that who is italicized, but the browser, who does not have human eyes, will not like understand that text as emphasized. So maybe that's not important when you're trying to convey tone or something, but if a browser is looking at a page and it sees a book title or something, and that's in italics, it's not going to understand maybe that there's supposed to be emphasis there, so it'll discount it. Less important for browsers. We don't really care about browsers' feelings, but if someone is using a screen reader and they're reading maybe some dialogue or whatever, if the screen reader comes across an I tag, it's just gonna read it as it was reading the rest of the sentence. If it comes across an M tag, so an emphasis tag or a strong tag, it's actually gonna have a different voice or a different tone to convey that meaning. So when we say semantic versus presentational, presentational just affects how something is presented. Semantic actually contains some information, whether for the browser or for a screen reader program, about how that text is to be interpreted. So if it's less important information, just slap it between an I or a B tag. It doesn't really matter. But if it's something that you think is crucial to understanding the page, and if you're like, if you really want to account for people using screen readers, M and strong are good things to use. Span tags are, yeah, same principle, but almost pretty much just presentational. So span tags basically just allow text to be formatted different from the text around it. So if I'm writing most of my text in Times New Roman, and it's blue Times New Roman, but I want to add some like Joker font in the middle of that. So if I was writing a sentence that was like, oh my God, why not just put it here? I went to the store today. I was feeling a bit crazy, but that's cool. I'm out. Okay, so everything in here is just going to appear. Everything that's between the p tag is going to appear whatever default or with a bit of styling. And then crazy, you have, okay, actually, give an ID, crazy text. I'll explain IDs later. Yeah, and then you put crazy between the span, and that lets you apply different styles to just this word in the middle of the paragraph. Sometimes you want to use that, sometimes you don't. Like often if you're formatting a lot of text, you kind of just want it to look the same, unless you have like a funky idea for it. Is everyone following so far? Am I going too fast? Are there any questions? Oh, I haven't checked the chat in a hot second. Sorry. Resources, repeated learnings and practice. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, the resources are key. I don't have any of these memorized. Because I'll go a couple months between making a website, and then when I go back to making a website, won't have forgotten. It's like riding a bike, kind of. Only the W3 schools kind of acts as your cerebellum. Yeah. So elements. Elements are great because they let us refer to what would otherwise be kind of sad and nameless. Wow, really? Really? God damn. So sorry about that. This is an element. This is an element. A tag is another word for an element, although a tag is the one of the two sandwich parts that make up an element. An attribute is an attribute of an element. So my name is Jules. I have naturally blonde hair. I am the element that is Jules. Hair blonde is my attribute, whatever. That's a whole philosophical thing to get into. Anyways, okay, so the two, so not every element can take every attribute. Don't worry about what can and can't take what, because if you refer to things in W3 schools, it'll, you know, if you look up like HTML video element, it'll give you a list of stuff. So yeah, you know, let's just do that right now. So you know what I'm talking about. W3 schools, yeah, video tag, video element, let's do that. Yada yada, how it works, example. Okay. Really? Okay, sometimes that'll. Okay, sometimes if there's a list of like specific attributes that something can take, there'll be a list of what it can't do. Sorry. Is that useful? No. Something more big. Okay, whatever. Once you start looking things up, you'll notice that some things have kind of specific attributes that they can take. So like, let's just refer back to this, or actually, yeah, the link element here in the head. Rel and type are like, not every element is going to have a type. You know, a video is pretty clearly a video. An image is pretty clearly an image. A link can have different types, and in this case, it's text CSS. In this case, it's rel. So certain elements have pretty specific attributes that wouldn't really make any sense applied to other elements. But anyways, two attributes that are always useful are IDs and classes. So when we get onto CSS, you'll see more why it's useful, but basically it's just a way of naming things specifically. So an ID is a way of saying this specific element, when I apply styles to it, I want it only to apply to this element. Something that's a class is like, these elements are similar and I want them all to have kind of the same, I want them to all share some characteristics. So it's kind of like an individual's name and a family name, you know? So my name is Jules Galbraith. So my ID might be Jules, my class might be Galbraith. Individually, you might want to be like, Jules is 5'4". They're wearing a ring and some tie-dye right now. These are imaginary CSS elements that obviously don't exist. Whatever. So individual characteristics or styling elements. Whereas for a class, maybe you have, so what could this look like? Yeah, sorry. You would have, oops. Okay, this element doesn't exist. I'm making up the Jules tag. No, I'm making up the person tag. And then maybe you have this exact same thing, but instead of me, it's my brother. So you might look at me and be like, okay, this is that. And then you would look, and then, so you would style some things that only apply to me, and you would style some things that only apply to my brother. And then you would style some things that apply to both of us. You know, maybe that's hair color, like maybe that's, you know, genetic makeup, whatever. So more practically, because obviously you're not styling people, that would apply to stuff like, okay, I have a paragraph. I have 2 paragraphs. I want them both to be formatted with Helvetica. I want the text color to be blue for both of them. So you have 2 different paragraphs, and they both kind of look the same. And you want to be able to apply that to multiple paragraphs. So that would fall. So that's what you would style under class. But then with ID is things that are more specific. So where is this paragraph located? You know, maybe I have a paragraph over here. Maybe I have a paragraph over here. And the way to distinguish them one from the other and be able to actually apply the things about them that need to be different and need to be specific is to give them IDs. Target blank. So target blank you saw super briefly before. Target blank basically just like if you have a link and you want, so you're on a web page, and this happens a lot when like web developers on the web don't add a target blank. You'll be on a web page and say you're in the middle of Wikipedia, you're in the middle of a Wikipedia article, you're getting into it, and like I personally have the habit of just like right clicking and saying like open a new tab instead of just clicking. But this is basically the same thing. So target blank just opens something in a new tab so that you don't lose the web page you're currently on, because otherwise the default behavior is to just, so yeah, I'm here, going to Google, sorry. So if you don't have a, so yeah, I have a link on this page. I'm pretty sure this doesn't have a target blank applied to it. So I open that and it reloads in this tab the information, but I'm like, oh man, what if I wanted to look through every other Google entry that there was? And if Google automated that for me, you know, if I open this without right clicking and hitting open a new tab, it maybe, so that's what a target blank does. It just automates the open a new tab. And this is actually something that social media sites do a lot. Go to Facebook, even though it's gonna be embarrassing. I'm so sorry about this. So I'm willing to bet that most of the, check this ad. I'm willing to bet that most of the ads and like promoted content and stuff that's advertised to me will actually, oh no, it didn't, because it's also a Facebook page, but just find another ad. I'm so, okay, this is not helpful. Anyways, usually if you open up an external link in a social media site, it'll bring you to a new window because Facebook fundamentally wants you to stay on Facebook. So it's like, okay, I'll let you go to this other website, but I'm going to open it up in a new tab so you don't lose the page that you're actually on. So from Facebook, that's creepy, but for you, it might be useful. Alt, yes. So this is, yeah, just applicable to tabs. Didn't need that long of an explanation, but whatever. Alt text is, so say you linked to an image not using an image that you have in your file structure, but using an image that is just found somewhere else in the web, and someone deletes that image, or it just doesn't load for whatever reason, then you'll get that little kind of thumbnail that I'm sure you're familiar with. It's like, I don't know, it's a bit blue and a bit green, but you'll also, if you've added an alt, you'll get a cat nuzzling a lizard. So if it's, I really loved this video the other week of a cat nuzzling a lizard. I think I sent it to 8 people. I think I sent it to Flora actually. So yes, if that image disappears, there will be some basic description of what the image contained. So if you've ever seen anyone on Instagram or wherever writing image descriptions, this performs the same function. People write image descriptions basically. You know, if you've ever seen someone holding a picture of the fruit and then you look in the comments and it's like person holding a picture of fruit and you're like, obviously it's a person holding a picture of fruit. Not obvious to everyone. Some people use screen readers. So if you want to increase the accessibility of your website, it's good practice to add alt text to all of your images so that people using screen readers have some idea of what's going on. The more detailed, the better. A cat nuzzling a lizard, not a huge amount of information. A long-haired Abyssinian, I don't know if that's a real cat breed, Abyssinian with caramel and black spots, half smiling, nuzzles a green iguana who looks uncomfortable, is a bit more information and provides more kind of context and, once again, a rounder experience for people that can't like take in the experience of an image for whatever reason. Yeah, and also if an image just disappears from your page and the image was like important to understanding what else is going on in the page, if there's alt text, that, you know, the experience isn't as broken, I guess. And then you have titles. Titles, I like titles a lot. You can put titles on everything. You don't, you know, so you can put them on here actually, the site that I just made, I put titles on everything. I like them for poetic effect. So if you're hovering over this hand, this little text here is a title. It's in the title attribute. I put one on the disco ball. I put one on this text, and I think I just put one in the middle of here. And I could even create like an empty div and like not style the div at all and put a title on it, and a little bit of text would pop up, and that would just be nice. I think it's nice. So yeah, titles are useful, once again, for just giving more information about something. Once again, I use it for poetic effect, so it can be kind of more, it can be like directly descriptive, or it can be kind of like peu rapport, but just yeah, like adding more to the experience. HTML is all about experience, kind of, for me. So, okay, so how do we see what we are writing? How do we see what we're writing? So if you have Atom downloaded, it's a good idea. It would be a good idea to yeah, install the Atom Live server, which is super simple. So you just go to the welcome guide. In fact, when you first open up Atom, the welcome guide will just kind of appear, and I'll just go there now, here. Welcome guide. Okay, so this is the page that kind of appears when you just open the program and you don't have any files. You would go to install a package, so you would open the installer, and then you, yeah, I have it right here because I was screenshotting. So Atom Live Server is right here, and it would have a little button like that. So you would hit install, and it would be installed. It's very simple. And then whenever you want to run it, so say this is my resources page that I was working on, what you would do is just hit Atom Live Server, and it's already running. So you would go to Atom Live Server, it appears under packages, start server, and that'll open your browser and give you a little live version of your site. So if you, this is useful because say you have this WordPress site here, but your style CSS, instead of having in fact, no, I won't do that. It would be too annoying. If I accidentally, okay, so also file names are case sensitive because computers love specificity. So if I accidentally named it style CSS, I would immediately see in my live server, come on. Really? I don't know. That should be giving me issues. Okay, when you try to create an issue and it won't give you an issue, I find that annoying. Anyways, I'll just open it up here because this is another way to view your, this is another way to view your web page. There we go. This is the issue that I thought I was going to get, but for some reason the live server didn't want to give me the issue. So usually that will work. especially if you're opening it up for the first time. So this is my style sheet not applied. Now I'm going to fix it. Reload that, and that's my style sheet applied. Okay. Oh, it wasn't working because this isn't my style page. Hold up. Okay, let me break it again. Sorry. Oops. Oh, yeah, so when you open the Atom Live server, it's automatically going to take you to the index.html, and that's what it was doing. So I'm just let me break this, style.css. Here's the live server, and now if I go to my resource page, because that was my resource, it's still not breaking? Why do you do this to me? God, that's embarrassing. There we go, broken. So this is a way of checking that everything works, and it's a way of seeing what everything looks like. Another way of seeing what everything looks like is, as you just saw me do, okay, I'm gonna unbreak this because it's upsetting me. Whatever. There we go. Okay, so the upshot of this, what I was trying to do when it breaks, is that it should just update automatically. The real upshot of using a live server is that if you have any JavaScript on the page, this will be running the JavaScript, whereas what I'm about to show you will not run any JavaScript if you do it. So another way of seeing what your HTML looks like in the browser is literally just going to the file, going to the folder that you're hosting all your stuff in. Okay, for the sake of, no, I'm not gonna do that because it's gonna break things. Yeah, for the sake of, sorry. Yeah, this is the folder that you have all your files in, and you can tell what an HTML document is and what a CSS document is because they have the different file names. I'll show you how to do that in a second. This is so yeah, this is an HTML page. I'm just gonna double click on that and it's gonna open automatically in my browser. And if I make a change in my code and I wanna see it reflected, Flora Fauna, who I love very much. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go to my resource page. Flora Fauna, who I love very much, will be there. And if I go back to my code, because they are great, okay, I'm going to go back here. This is still just the file that is on my desktop. It's not automatically updated. So I have to reload it and then the new content will be there. Yeah, I guess I will just teach you how to, so when you're making, yeah, so you wanna usually, okay, I'm just gonna run you through this super fast, just in case. New folder. Name that. And then in Atom, just minimize that. I'm going to go folder, open folder, desktop, test2. There's nothing here yet. Okay, yeah, so there's nothing here yet because there's just nothing here yet. So I'm going to go to File, New File, and yeah, you'll see that the welcome stuff just opens automatically, and that's where you can install your packages, whatever. What's that? So you're going to you have this little thing. You're going to right click, and you're going to new file, and then you're going to name your file index.html, and make sure you include the file ending here. So index.html, and then you can create folders in here. So new folder, images, new folder. No, not in the images folder. Just in here. Stop. Styles. Okay, just like I said, and then in the styles folder, you're gonna right click on the styles folder. You're gonna make a new style, and you're gonna call it "This is what look like." .css. Crucial. You don't have to name it that. You can name it whatever you want. Convention is actually to name it style.css for clarity. you don't have to do that. This is just to emphasize that the only thing that actually needs to be named something conventional is index.html. So I need to drink some water. So what we can do basically is you can put some content on a page, and we'll take a little bit of time to do that. So if you have any images ready, you can put images on your web page. If you have some text you want to throw into a web page, you can throw some text on a web page. And I'm just going to go back to, so everyone go to this slide, and I'm just going to make sure that it's not fucked. Right here. I'm so sorry about this. In.us, viewport content, device. Yeah, that's fine. This you're going to want to change because that's an ugly title. This, if you like, you're going to want to change. Yeah, here, so the styles dot, and change this to whatever you call your CSS. And the rest of it should be fine. So you can copy and paste your first HTML directly into your index HTML. And then you can start to, oh yeah, sorry, the body tags is just where everything goes. So if you have P tags, paragraph tags, if you have header tags, if you have images, videos, whatever, it all goes inside the body. So everything here, and then the body closes it all at the end. Okay, I'll check the chat. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Okay. So are there any questions? You can also turn your mic on if you want. No? Okay. So I'm gonna recommend, if there are no questions, that we take a bit of a break, during which you can add some content to your site, and then try just opening up the file in the browser to test getting content working up there. Yeah. So what do we want to do? Like 15 or 20 minutes, or checking the Flora? What do you think? 15 minutes? Eh?
Yes, 15 minutes. Okay with everybody?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I need to rest my voice a little bit before we get into CSS. Yeah, I hope everything makes sense so far. It like can be a bit confusing at first, but yeah, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty simple. And it is like, it's also the kind of thing that as soon as you start actually putting things on a page, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, see you in 15. HTML energy? Are we running into problems?
I sort of did something, but I also took a small break. So now I'm like, how do we see the thing that we wrote?
So either, did you get the live server?
Yes, I think so.
So either you can go to, here, I'll just, if you see the top kind of toolbar in Atom, there's one that says packages.
I don't know.
So here.
That it does. Oh, yes. Okay, sorry. Wrong. I'm looking at
So yeah, so just hover over that, and if you go
Atom Live Server.
Hover down, and like one of the first ones will be Atom Live Server.
And then start server.
And you just, start server.
And then.
Okay. And that'll, if you just click on that, it'll open your browser.
I don't know if that is happening yet. I guess wait, I'll just keep waiting. It takes a minute. Yeah, no.
Do you want to share your screen?
Sure.
Start server, yeah. Interesting. Is there any HTML in your page? Sorry? Flora, you're muted. Flora, you're muted.
Gosh, sorry. No, I was just wondering if that doesn't work, can I just like...
Oh, if it doesn't work, just like click on your index.html.
Okay, that's what I was...
It'll open in your browser, yeah.
And then do I need to save it, or does it just like save automatically everything?
No, you need to save it. Yeah, make sure you're saving continuously.
Okay.
Because if you write stuff and you don't save it, then it's not going to appear when you hit.
Okay, and then the images are not showing up, so I don't know if I did.
Share your screen again.
Gosh, this is embarrassing.
Sorry, I can't tell what you're doing. If
No, it's okay. Maybe we should ask. I don't know how everyone's doing and if anybody's tried, but we should. I'm gonna try to enable screen for everybody.
Just we can do it on a case by case if anyone's having issues. But
okay, sounds good.
This could also let me diagnose your image issue.
Hold on, sorry. Share screen. Okay. So I mean, I don't know. The thing is, my things were not in picture, but this is what I have here. I like put all.
Okay. Yeah. So that's your.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's kind of long. I don't know. Well, I wasn't sure if, because it wasn't directly in the picture folder, so I was like, I'm gonna link it to where it is.
Put it in the picture folder.
But it's so messy then, because I can't find anything.
What?
Oh, do you mean like picture folder for the website?
Like put your image in put your image under your florafauna.earth folder or somewhere in there.
Okay, and then it will just find it because it's in that folder. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. If you're putting absolute, because the thing is that you want it to be in that folder, because if it's not in that folder, when you upload the folder to your host, the image isn't going to be in it. So you need to have all of the content that you want on your website in the folder that you're uploading. And then instead of giving it that whole long nasty path that you gave it, you can just give it the image like name with .gif.
Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, how's everyone else doing? Does anyone have any questions or kind of concerns or long file paths? I'm gonna take 2 seconds before we get into CSS to just show you guys how to publish your site onto your Netlify account. So hopefully everyone's made a Netlify. Because, okay, so yeah, I didn't make a slide about this because I forgot, and because it'll just be easier to show you guys in my account. So yeah, the two things that you need to actually get this file that's currently on your computer online is, so right now your computer is hosting all the files, but nobody else can see it because no one can see the interior of your computer. So you need to host it. Someone who owns a bunch of servers somewhere needs to host it for you. So in this case, we're asking Netlify, which is the website that I put in the resources, to host the files. And yeah, so you know, these hosts are kind of, they're configured on networks that your computer isn't, which is why they can host things and you can't. You can actually set up independent servers. I personally don't know how to do that, so I'm not gonna go into that. But anyways, I will screen share and show you how to get your site published on Netlify. Okay, so this is my Netlify account. I thought I was already logged in, but apparently they logged me out. There we are, I'm logged in. This is actually, this is actually so easy. I like didn't, I was like confused by how easy this was initially. So you can, you know, you can like hook it up to, I'm not gonna go into what you can do actually. So usually I host things on something called GitHub, and I have like a desktop client for that. And I kind of like push things automatically from my desktop, but I'm not going to go into that because it's like, it's just going to be an explanatory rabbit hole that isn't necessary right now. So yes, so I'm going to click on my site. So if you have more than one site, they will appear here, and you can have more than one site. The only thing is that at a certain point, it'll start to creep into your total storage. So, you know, eventually you might have to upgrade or whatever. So yeah, so this is my site. I click on it, and this is the last time that I published it. So I last published it 3 days ago when I was updating the resources probably. So if I go to my site right now, this beautiful line of text is not there. So you guys know that I love Flora because you can see what I'm locally doing on my computer. But if I go to the resource page that I linked you all, the wider internet does not know that I love Flora. Okay, needs to change. Can't have that. So I go to deploys. And then this is basically just my deploy history. So this is how many times I like uploaded new stuff. And this little nice box here is this, it's so comically easy. It actually, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's a thing of beauty. So I go to my desktop, close this chat. I have, sorry, I'm just gonna minimize that. Okay, so everyone see this box? It's under your deploys tab. I take my test folder, which is just my website folder. Now, if I was deploying multiple websites, so say this is just the one website. If I had new folder, oh, sorry, that's test 2 actually. That's not what I want. Sorry, yeah, this is the folder that I want. Yeah, so folder now. So let's say I just, you know, have another website in in an ideal world, test and test2 would be in one folder, and that's just what I would be deploying. But in the case that you have not now, and my other website is called admin, so I would only drag not now because that's all that I want to appear here. I'm just gonna get rid of that because it's not how it was before. Okay, so yeah, so this is test, this is my site folder. You literally just take your site folder and you drag it here. And then it just uploads and it publishes. It's incredible. That's literally all you need to do. Does that make sense? And then you can check the status. 6 new files are uploaded. Yada yada. You can preview what your site's looking like before it publishes. You're like, great, everything's working out. Great, and the deploy was published, and it's so easy, it blows my mind. Okay, cool. So yeah, my new site was published at 4:31 p.m. and now if I reload this page, which is live, my new text is there. It's super incredible. Okay, cool. So yeah, so it's literally a drag and drop interface. You just go to the deploys tab, and then you drag your site folder here, and it will upload and publish. Okay, let's go to CSS.
Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
So each time that you make a change on your web page, you have to do that to upload a new file?
Yeah, so you don't need to do that. Don't do that after every little change because it's going to be a pain in the ass. So that's why we have the live server, kind of, so that you can work on your site for a little while. Say you're hanging out in the evening, you're listening to some nice music, you're writing some HTML, you're feeling good. Say it takes you, you're fiddling with your CSS, you're like, oh, I want this to be blue, no, I want it to be green, no, I want it over here, no, I want it over there. You're making all these changes. Every time you make a change, you're kind of, this is my users page. That's that. This is my also users page. That's my live server. So I'm in here, I'm kind of fiddling with my live server. Is this my resources page? Yeah, I'm saving. Link div. Okay, I want this to be a totally different font, so I want this to just be, I just want this to be monospace. Hold up. Does that look good? Go here, I look at my links. So this is what you're doing when you're building the website. When you're kind of toying around with what things should look like, you're going between what you've written and, oh, so this is what CSS looks like. I'm going to explain this in a sec. This is what HTML looks like. So this is that resource, this page plus like these makes this. So yeah, so you're going between either your live server or just like the file that you've like clicked on and it opens in your desktop that you have to manually reload. You're doing this to check what it looks like, to make sure everything's fine, to make sure your links are working, whatever. And then when you're like, okay, I'm happy with this, this is ready to go onto the internet, that's when you deploy it. So you don't need to deploy it every time you like, I mean, if you, if you make your site and then you deploy it and then you are looking at it online and you realize that you've like forgotten to add something, then you just add that and then you deploy it again. But when you're just making it, there's no point in deploying it after, like, because it's like this file is saved on your computer. So you don't need like, you don't need to be, worried that like, I don't know, if you don't host it online, all this is going to disappear or something. And like, yeah, which is just to say, put the finished version online, but when you're still working on it and like testing things out and like working on the look, you don't need to publish it yet. You just publish it. You publish it when it's ready to be published. Yeah. So you can do that once, or you can be like me and like forget to add like a sentence fragment, or just like, but you also publish it when you're updating it, you know? So the great thing about this is that like this, you know, on the one hand, you may be sick of working on your website and you never want to touch it again. On the other hand, it may be more of a blog type thing that you want to keep adding to. And then every time you add something and then you wait a week and you're like, oh, I have something to write about, or I have a new image, I want to add this to my website. You add it to your website in the code, and then you republish it and your site updates and everyone can see what you've been working on in the past week. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about CSS. So this is where we left off, the live server, and then I was going to have a little moment where we worked on our HTML. Okay, so as I explained earlier, this is HTML, this is CSS. If you've ever opened up, yeah, so let's just, let's break this code again. So, okay, this is important actually, and I forgot to add it to the presentation, so I'm just going to tell you now. When you want to comment something, okay, so you see this, how this is like, this is an uncommented line and this is a commented line. So when something is commented out, it's only for people to read. It's not for the computer. The computer is not going to pick up on this. So I'm just going to comment this out. And if you want to manually comment something out, you write, commenting is different in every programming language. Like in JavaScript, I could just go like that and it would be commented out. But in HTML, I have to go fucking this, and then this. Oh, shut up. What did I do wrong? Oh, yeah. Okay. And just that line is commented out. More practically, I'm on a Windows, so I just hit control the slash that goes. I hit that, and it comments it out. And so now that this is commented out, I'm gonna go back to my live server, and I'm gonna have this fucking naked ass bird, the naked bird equivalent of a web page. And now I'm gonna go, back to my code, and I'm gonna uncomment this line, and I'm gonna have my beautiful parakeet of a web page. So commenting, why is it useful? It's useful when it's, okay, so say you're trying to organize your CSS and you're like, everything main page CSS. So it's useful just when you like, when you're looking at your code again, and that's resource CSS. It's useful for organizing. It's useful for like understanding what you're doing. Because if your CSS page gets really long, or like your HTML page gets really long, and you're like, I forget what this does here. It's a way of making little notes and like annotating your code, basically. Or it's a way of like, if you're testing, if you're testing out a line, and you're not sure you want to keep it. So like, okay, so this is the text editors, and I'll just take a, so I'm like, oh, do I really need a section on free hosts? I don't know, I'm just going to comment it out. And then I'm going to go back to my page, and lo and behold, the free notes section has disappeared. And then you're like, you know what, actually, I do want people to know about free hosts. I'm going to uncomment it, and the free hosts section will be back there. So it's a way of kind of saving code that you've written that you're not sure if you want to use. Yeah, so it's useful. Okay, let's get on to CSS. So you saw the difference between the beautiful in its own way, but perhaps not so effusively decorated. HTML is beautiful in every form, in my opinion, but CSS really takes it to another level of decoration. So what are the elements of a CSS thing? A CSS element. Yeah, so you can refer to any HTML element within your CSS with its selector. So we can recognize P and body and div and nav and A from what we just put in our CSS. And this is kind of like a class in that it will, so if you style all of your paragraphs using the P tag, every single paragraph that you have will take on that style. Whereas if you style it with reference to the ID or the class, then only what you gave an ID name to will take on that style. So if I have text that, so let's, yeah, just like an example, I'm just gonna write it and add it. Shut up. Yeah, so if I have code that looks like, if I have a P that looks like, I'm not actually gonna open this in the browser because it's not gonna look like anything. P class name equals body text, so I'm writing a body text. ID equals third paragraph. Yeah, and then I say, hi there, this is the third. So what I would do in the CSS, I'm not gonna, I would put it in here, but for the sake of the visual, I'm just gonna put it here. So yes, I have, and maybe I have fourth paragraph. IDs and classes are also case sensitive. So this is the, so if I was styling this, I would say, okay, I want my body text. Okay, so also a class, so a P, you can do this, and CSS is gonna understand that it's a P. A class, you have to put a dot before the selector name. And then you say body. And say I want font family equals so this is a way, so both of these will appear in this font. And then if I want, then I want my third paragraph to be red. So I'm gonna put this little hash, which means that I'm about to write an ID. So it's gonna look for IDs, third paragraph. And I want color equals red. Sorry, color is going to equal R, so it's going to equal 255. That'll probably be red. And then I want, so there are different ways of designating colors in CSS. I'm going to talk about that a bit later. Fourth paragraph, and then I'm going to do color seafoam, which is actually a color, I think. So I'm going to get, basically what's going to happen here is that both of these will be in this font, and this guy is going to be red, and this guy, if seafoam is in fact a color, which I think it is, will be a nice seafoam green. So that's just a, yeah, that's just a way of illustrating the difference between class and body. And maybe, yeah, so like I very rarely use selectors as general as P, just because I like being able to refer to things with a lot of specificity, kind of. It's CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So if you set a style in P and then you set something in a class that contradicts it, it's actually going to take on what you set in the class. And then if you set something in the ID that contradicts what's in the class, it's going to take on what's set in the ID. But it's kind of like, why set something in something general when you can just set it in something specific? So it's called Cascading Style Sheets because the styles cascade down into each other from the very general to the very specific. But yeah, I honestly, I usually just give everything an ID, and then refer to it like that. You can also give just one thing a class, but you know, whatever. Like, why give something a class when you could give it an ID? Does that make sense? Cool. Okay, so yes. So selectors. So yeah, you can select things generally. I usually just select using the ID. So remember, if you're going to select something with the ID name, you need the hash. And if you select something with one or more things with the class name, you need the period. Yes. Very important. Okay, so yeah, so just to go over this little anatomy, the property that you set is this, is whatever is in front of the colon. So you have property colon, and you have property value, and then you have a semicolon. Remember the semicolon. Remember the semicolon. Remember the semicolon. In most programming languages, not most programming languages, but in a lot of programming languages, it's a convention to end a line with a semicolon. And that just lets the computer know that you've ended a line. So if I was to write, oh my God, I keep opening Discord. I'm just going to close Discord. Sorry. I keep clicking on it. I'm going to close Adobe too. I'm going to close everything. Yeah. Yes. So if I was to write, I love this paragraph. This is a paragraph that I love. And then I want it to be color red, and then I want it to be width 50%. My computer is going to get confused. It's going to be like, what do you mean you want the color to be red width? It's not going to understand. So instead of interpreting this as red, it's going to interpret this as color red width. And it's going to be like, I have no clue what you're saying. But if we give it a semicolon, the computer is going to be like color red. I can do that. So yeah, so just this to say is that after every property value, add a semicolon. If you are having an issue with CSS, check your semicolons. It might be that you forgot one. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I should have emphasized the closing tag on an HTML element as much as I'm emphasizing the semicolon. If you don't close your HTML tag with a backslash, your HTML is going to get confused. If you don't close your property value on your CSS with a semicolon, your CSS is going to get confused. Computers are dumb. They're workhorses, but they're dumb. They don't understand context. They don't understand semantics. They just understand symbols, basically. And they don't even understand them, they just follow them. Okay, so what can be styled in CSS? This is the part where I'm kind of like, you can style everything in CSS, so I'm not actually gonna go into everything that you can style in CSS, because that's what online references are for. Yeah, and this is to just drive home the fact a bit that you really don't need to, like, it's good to like if I had to look up like every single like, oh, okay, how do I add this? It would take me a long time, but also I do. And like, it's one thing to kind of look something up in like a dictionary or like an encyclopedia where you have to look at the index and then you have to flip to the page. But if I'm like, add rounded corners to image, CSS, make sure you say CSS or whatever. And then it's literally the first link is going to be like how to create rounded images. And I'm gonna be like, oh, that's cool. And then I'm going to see that all I have to do is set the border radius to 50%. And I'm going to be like, oh, I've never seen, you are, for the first couple of weeks that you're doing this, you're going to be like, oh, I've never heard of this border radius property. Very interesting. What does it do? So actually, let's just put it, let's put it in my index. So I have this, this hand that I made. I'm going to go to, what did I call you? So now I'm getting, yeah, let's do this live. Why not? What did I call you? I'm not in my index. Open my index. Index, yeah. So, yeah, so this is all the code that went into making this page. And I keep calling it code, and I'm sorry about that because it's not code. it's markup. Yeah, so what did I call my hand? Here's the element that creates my hand. So I called it, my ID is hand 1, because I was going to make more hands and then I didn't. And they would have been hand 2 and 3, whatever. And then I go into my CSS and I look for hand 1. And if I can't find it, if I have a really long CSS, I can go Control F and find that. Okay, there it is. So the only style I really added to this, I didn't even add a side, was that. Now if I go to border, radius, and this is the other upshot of having Atom, as opposed to just writing whatever you want in your notepad, is that I get all these beautiful suggestions. And that's another way of outsourcing like your memory to the computer, kind of. It's really useful. So I'm like, oh yeah, I did want border radius. Border radius, hey, border, enter. Let's give it a 50% because we're nasty and we want a circle. Yeah. And now look at my hand, it's round. I can do this a lot. I can go down and make it like 10% or whatever, and then I'll have a less rounded image. There we go. So yeah, so little styles like this. If you have an idea for what you want something to look like, yeah, okay. A good way to approach CSS is to just sketch out using pencil and paper what you want your website to look like before you start making it. And then add your content to your website and then start just Googling how to do the things that you want to do. You're like, okay, I want something in this corner and I want something in this corner and I want this at half opacity. All you have to do is Google like CSS position this, CSS position, and yes, I'm going to run you through this. I'm not just going to like, I'm not just going to throw you into the water here. But that is a good way to do it. And like generally you're going to find everything that you look for. If you Google it, you're going to find it fast and you're going to be able to pretty much just copy paste little snippets of code that do everything. And then you can play around with values. So yeah, so these are some of the things: color, background colors, background images, rounding corners, font types, the alignment of your stuff, the opacity, position, outlines and text shadows, animation. And here, this is a link to like the Mozilla developer tutorial if you feel like reading a bunch of text. And then this is the link to, this reference is the link to the W3 Schools, kind of a long list of CSS properties. How do I know what element takes what property? You look it up. Easy as that. It's really easy. Okay, web colors. This is fun. I wasn't making fun of Flora, and I hope they didn't take it that way when when they made the site spiral like page, and I was like, oh buddy, like your contrast is low. So another aspect of web accessibility is contrast, because some people use screen readers because like you know, some people are low vision and use screen readers because like looking at a web page is like pretty much impossible. Some people just have differential vision. So if you've ever seen one of those color blinds, here, color blinds test. Oh God, is this gonna give me what I want? I just kind of want that like bubble thing, and that, yeah, it's one of these things. Man, okay, you see this guy. So for someone who is colorblind, this is hard to read. And for someone who just has low vision, or kind of like not great vision, say a light blue background and then a slightly darker blue, or like a same tone but green text is going to be really hard to read. So a way to mitigate that is to, yeah, this is a contrast checker. So here you can check the contrast and your background. What do you, yeah, so the WCAG, this is the accessibility guidelines. So if you want to read like a multi-page paper on accessibility guidelines, you can Google this and it'll bring you to a big document. Requires a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. So this just means that one color has 4.5 the level of, I don't know, brightness or darkness or whatever. Yeah, and you can pick two colors. So if you have a background color and you have foreground text, you can be like, okay, my background is this color, and it's going to give you an RGB value. RGB stands for red, green, blue. The way that computer screens make color is that they combine light. So when I was like doing an example before, I was like, oh, okay, so 255, 50, 50 is going to be a red, because so the highest number is 255, the lowest number is 0. So 000 is black. It's black. 255, 255, 255 is white. And then if you want a nice green, maybe the green is going to be the highest, so you'll do like 50. You don't have to do this manually, I'm just demonstrating it. So yeah, you pick your background color, that, and then you pick your foreground color, that, and the contrast ratio is terrible. So it looks cool. It does look cool. I'm not denying that it looks cool. And honestly, like, you are making an artwork and not like an informational page. So just be conscious of how you want this color to function, whether you want it for an aesthetic purpose or whether you want it for an informational purpose. And like, no one can tell you what to do about aesthetics, but if you are making a page and you do want it to contain information, you do want that information to be like accessible to everyone, then think about your contrast ratio. So this is a terrible contrast. So that being said, if we put the lightness down, we quickly get, so yeah, we're at 1.22, we need like a 4.6. Let's put the lightness down. And okay, so this is failing right now, fail, fail. All of a sudden we get a pass. So this is more legible. This is like legible on an accessibility. Away, and yeah, so you're going to be using colors a lot in CSS, whether for backgrounds or for fonts or whatever. The way to, okay, and also note that if you're talking about paragraph, when I say color, this refers to the font color. If I want a background color, so if I want the whole div that this appears in to be red, I'm going to say background color, red. And this is not going to be accessible at all. This is going to be the same thing. So I'll do black actually. HTML does have some, sorry, CSS does have some colors that you can just call by name. Usually you don't do that. So there are different ways to refer to colors. And the way that I choose colors is that I Google color picker. And it brings me this thing. This is sick. So I want a seafoam green. Actually, I'm gonna see if I can find this. CSS colors. There should be a whole list of like colors that actually have names. Yeah, so these are all the colors. So if you type blanched almond into your CSS, you will get this color. If you type dark salmon into your CSS, you will get this color. If you, and then other things you won't be able to type, you know, if you type, so let's look, is there a I don't know, some colors you'll type in and you think that they'll work and they don't work. So yeah, there's a forest green. Okay, all of the color names that I'm trying to think of, I'm seeing, but not every color has a name. I know someone who really likes the color tomato. I can't remember who it is. Most colors don't have a name. As you can see, there's probably only like 100 here. So if you want a really specific color, you just fiddle around with this. You're like, oh, I want a nice seafoam, but is there a seafoam actually? Because I use that as a sea. Okay, I thought there was a seafoam green and I put it in my code before and it wouldn't have worked because there's no seafoam green. But if I want a nice seafoam, I'm gonna go kind of to the edge of green and blue, and then I'm gonna drag it around, get the lightness nice. I'm like, yeah, I like this. And then what I'm gonna do is either I'm gonna copy the RGB, in which case I'm gonna refer to it as, so I'm gonna say, yeah, background color, RGB, and I'm gonna paste that, and that's gonna work. Or I am going to copy the hex. So these are just two different ways of referring to the same color. I'm going to copy the hex and go back into my fake example. Oh, stop. Oh, where did my fake go? It's in this one. Sorry. So then I'm going to take out the RGB and just copy the hex, and I'll get the same color. I like using RGB because I can kind of I don't really know how the hex system works, and this I can kind of intuitively be like, I know that this is like, I know that this is going to be a red because the red value is the highest, you know? Like obviously I can't predict every color, but I like using RGB just because I'm familiar with it. Also, if I want to build opacity into my color, I hit RGB-A, and A stands for alpha value, and alpha value basically just stands in for the opacity. And then at the end of this 3 words, so this is my red value, this is my green value, this is my blue RGB. Yeah, half the time I want the RGB color picker. I'll accidentally type like RBG into Google, and it'll give me like Ruth Bader Ginsburg stuff, and I'll be like, I don't want that. So it's RGB, not RBG. And then I type an A value, and the alpha takes a value between 1 and 0. So, so I want this to be like super, super pale. So I'm going to give it like an 0.3. So this is going to be like a nice seafoam at at like a third of the opacity, which is just going to wash it out. It's going to wash out the saturation. If you have an element like a div that's kind of sitting over like a color, and you affect the opacity, you're going to be able to see what's under it because it's not fully opaque. So yeah, that's a fun thing. Opacity, you get some really nice effects like this kind of rectangle here probably has an opacity of like 0.2. Another useful thing I'm actually just going to show you right now is if you're ever looking at a site and you're like, oh, I wonder how they made this. Usually, sometimes you can go to more tools, you can go to developer tools, and you can just look right at their code. And sometimes their code is going to be really ugly because they've used a framework, and sometimes it's just going to be nice and simple. So you can go to the elements, and you can just see their code. So this is the code that made this, and this is the code that made this, and this is the code that made this, and that's the code that made that. So that's cute and fun. Yeah, let's go back to CSS. So yeah, there are links to the color picker and the accessibility guidelines and backgrounds. So I am gonna rush through these a little bit because it's intuitive and you can look everything up. So if you want a color background, you do have to designate that it's background color, and then you can do its color value. So I've explained this. This is the hex, and this is the RGB. This is a cool tool that helps you make gradients. So here you can be like, oh, I want this color to be this, and I want this color to be that, and I want this color to be this. God, that's ugly. God damn, that's ugly. Let's put the lightness up here. That's the opacity, actually. Okay, whatever, it's ugly. And then I want like a linear or a radial. And then it generates some CSS for me, and I can just paste that wherever I want. Yeah, so if I have, and you can apply background colors to any element. So if you have a div that you're putting things in, you can, did I explain what divs were? Well, probably not. I think I just said that they were like a box and I left it at that. Let's not do anything. Okay, let's just put this. Let's put free hosts inside a div. Host. And then I'm going to close this div. Okay. And then I'll look at my resources. This is my, no, sorry, that's my actual page. Oh yeah, where at? My server. Okay. so I've taken this out of the main CSS, so it doesn't know what's going on anymore. But this is just to illustrate divs. But if I give it this cool, if I give it this cool background gradient that I've just generated, oh my God, stop. There we go. Yeah, we just put it there. I actually don't know why all of the style is taken off, but anyways, you can kind of just put things anywhere in CSS. It's good to oops. Interesting. Indian line. Oh, that's why. Name things properly. Sorry about this. ID host, yes. Can I outline you? Like, why are you being upset? I don't fully know why putting a div around this took the styling out completely. I do find it a bit annoying. Back up. Like, why did that happen? Oh yeah, because it just took it out of the paragraph. Totally. I'm just gonna put in a div at the end in the hopes that it doesn't. Div. Sorry, sometimes when you're trying to do something on the fly, it doesn't work the way you want it to work. And then, yeah, the ID is definitely host, so I'll go into my style and say host, outline color. Okay, so we'll see, I put a little div at the end. It was being annoying up there, I don't know why. But I've outlined, and now I'm actually just going to give it some so that you can actually see how big it is. And now hopefully the bloody gradient will apply. So it's being annoying. Very nice. Yay, there we go. That worked. It's right there. It was being annoying before. CSS is going to find you kind of talking to your computer a lot, asking it why it doesn't want to do what you're doing, and then you figure out how to get it to do what you want it to do, and you smile at it again, and it feels good. So yeah, so this is just a free gradient generator. So you can set gradients as your background. You can set pure colors as your background. You can set images as your background too. So I'm just going to refer. This is actually literally just the code that I have for my image background for the Not Now. So it's not moving because it's a video, it's moving because it's a GIF. So I basically just made a GIF, set it, I made a GIF so it moves. GIFs are a lot lighter than videos too, so if you want a moving background, consider just making a GIF instead of a video. Yeah, so I made a GIF. I put it in my, I think it's disco1.gif, and then in my style, I have my main page, so I'm pretty sure main page just refers to my body. So my whole body, so the entire page is just referred to under main page. And then I have my background image. I give it a URL. So that's just how it finds, oh, it's actually my second disco ball. Yeah, so I just tell it where to find the image. I say, I don't want you to repeat, because if I did, it would look like this. Yeah, if I, so what I did is that I just stretched, I stretched my image and told it to not repeat. But if I left all the default settings, it would be repeating, and that would, I don't like that. I like this. So I want it to, I want the size to be cover. You can also say size 100%, and I want no repeats. Although it is pretty classic GeoCities HTML to have a repeat background. Okay, I'm gonna look at the, I'm gonna look at the comments now, super sorry. Chat. Do you put all your style info in one CSS file? The website you showed us for contrast accessibility understands opacity levels. Oh, bonne question. Bonne question. Okay, so this particular one does not. This particular one does not, but there are web. Sometimes you kind of just have to throw keywords at something. Yeah, so for this one, you can at least check alpha transparency on the foreground. So I would just look for another contrast checker and keep opacity in your search term, and you should be able to find one that does take transparency. And your other comment was, oh, do I break up my CSS files? I break up my CSS files when they're getting too big. So if I have like 8 HTML pages or more than 8 HTML pages, like on my web page, on my main web page, I have like many different pages, and the style just kind of gets unwieldy. So for this one, as you can see, what I've done is that I've just broken up the sections, so by commenting them. So this is everything that's on the main page, and this is everything that's on the resource page, even though I put host, up there, which I don't do. And that's one way of breaking it up, especially if you've got a lot of styles. Also, another thing that you can do is that you don't have to put them, you can put everything all on one line if you want to. And that's another reason to have semicolons. I know that some people put all their CSS on one line. I put it on different lines because I find it easier to read. So yeah, you can, you don't have to. Like the only thing is that what you have to remember is that you are linking your CSS page to your HTML file. So if you have a lot of different HTML files, if you have a lot of different, like if you have a lot of different HTML files and they're all talking to the same CSS file, you can basically just copy paste all the important stuff and change the body. If you have a lot of HTML files and you have a couple different CSS files, so if I have another CSS file, new file, style2.css. So this is my new CSS file. Sorry, it didn't get created because I pressed enter too fast. Style2.css, enter. There we go. Style2.css, and now I want like a hide. You can name your elements whatever you want. So then, and now I'm like, okay, I don't want any of the styles here. I only want the styles that are in style2. Then I would go to my index and I would just say, I want you to talk to style2.css. So you just have to remember that all your links work. So yeah, you can have as many CSS files as you want. Files are not that big. Like they're not too much information. So don't worry about having like a bunch of different these. Like do whatever is best to keep your ideas and your page organized for yourself. That being said, if you have multiple CSS files, be good and make yourself a CSS subfolder. This is bad structure because I've just put everything in the test folder, unlike what I told you guys to do on literally the first slide. But I was doing it fast and so I didn't bother. But yeah, so if you have a style.css folder, then once again, just make sure you're referring to it in the right way. So you're going to say styles, this is the folder, .style.css, etc. If you guys make a bunch of folders and you're confused about how to refer to them and your links start breaking, just come talk to me and I'll be able to figure out what's going on. Back to CSS. So yeah, that's color, background colors, image backgrounds. So yeah, that's, I just showed you with mine, you can put an image as a background. There are different settings that you can add. With the CSS, I'm not going to go too much into every property because I've linked a bunch of info pages that talk specifically about kind of background sizing. So how to make an image that's like a full page, how to make an image that's you know, a bunch of repeated things. A lot of making a website is just kind of getting used to reading pages that look like this, and like hopefully everyone understands what's going on with this little snippet here and knows. So this you can literally just paste directly into your CSS file, but you know that this has to refer, you can't just say example 1, you have to be like, okay, they're using example 1, but in my code, I've named this background, like I've named this hash background image, or I've given this the ID background image, so I need to change this text to background image, but then this will work, kind of. So this is a code fragment that you can paste and you just plug in the details that are specific to you. So the image name, all this, etc. And a lot of coding HTML is just getting used to looking at stuff like this, and gradually the thickets will clear and you'll understand what's going on. And when you do understand what's going on, it gets, you know, it gets super useful because all of a sudden, all of this stuff that used to make no sense, you can now steal for yourself. Yeah, and okay, so these are CSS properties, and this is just a long list of like CSS properties that you can use for yourself. So either you can click through them and learn what you can do, and there's always a little, on this page, there's always a little try it yourself thing. So that'll bring you to an example. And you can kind of like mess around with the properties here. So if I go to 350 and then I run it, you know, that changes. If I go to 200 and I run it, that changes, stuff like that. So you can see what's being affected in this little, and that's why this website is so useful, because it really gives you all of those tools. So yeah, so that's background sizing. Backgrounds are great, they're really important. Divs. So divs are what I was talking about before, because they're really just kind of little boxes that you can put other content in, and that really helps you kind of organize your page. So an important part of sizing is what's in a div. So here the div is the dark green. The div is the dark green square. And you can add a border to a div. It can be, sometimes when I just want to see where my div is on a page, I'll add a black border to it, and then it'll show me how big it is, and then I'll know like, oh, okay, I need to make this half the size. Outside of a div, there's the margin. So the margin is how much space there is between the div and the other element. You can also add margins to just paragraphs. You can add margins to headers. You can add margins to images. It's just how much space is between the margin and like the main body of the page. So when I'm placing things on a page, I'm usually adjusting the margins. The padding is the space inside the element. So if you want to put a paragraph in a div and you want to give the div a color, and you don't want the paragraph to be like hidden, you don't want the text to be hitting the sides of the div, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to give this a little bit of padding so that it kind of sits inside. And you can give it equal padding all around, or you can give it padding just on top, or you can give it padding just on one side. You can really customize it like that. So yeah, does that make sense to everyone? How that's like, do you want an example?
I'm a bit confused.
Okay. Let's make an example. Let's put it, yeah, let's just keep putting stuff on the resource page. So I have my host, okay, so I have my host div here, and in my style, go away. Where did I put my okay, so right now my host is here. So I've added a new div and I've said hi inside it. And actually I'm going to put hi inside a paragraph, because otherwise they will. So yeah, you don't need to put text inside paragraphs, but it's good practice. So, okay, so I'm going to make my div white so you guys can all see where it is. So background color. So now you can see, so everything that's white is the div. And hi is still just a paragraph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some padding around, I'm going to put some padding inside the div. So I'm going to say padding 50 pixels. And now there's 50 pixels around each side. The div is still really big because the div kind of automatically is just as big as its parent object. It's inside a bigger div right now. So I want to adjust the div size. I want to say, and also you can put padding on just one side. So you can say padding top, and we'll see that there's only padding on top and there's none on the other sides. And if we want to adjust the size of the div, we can say, I want the width to only be 50% of the thing that it's in. So now we see that the div, this is what's called a parent. So when I say that HTML is structured like boxes, I mean, I've put everything inside a div that's called link div. So it's just the div that's holding on my links. And I know that that div is there because it's inside this kind of like opacity thing. So so every other element that I put inside this big div is called a child of that div. So host, I don't know why I called it host, but host is a child of link div. Link div is a parent of child. And so when I say I want host to be 50%, I want the width of host to be 50%, the computer is going to be like, okay, 50% of what? It's going to look to its immediate parent and say 50% of that. And now I'll explain margins. So an easy way of centering things on a page is just to make the element about like half of what it is, and then say, okay, and now I want to give you a left margin left of 25%. It's fractions, kids. There we go, it's centered. So that's the difference between padding and margin. So a padding is space created inside the element, and margin is space created outside the element. Does that make sense? Cool. And so yeah, so this is basically how I place things. I just, so this is so there are three main boxes on this page. There's the body, which is the whole, like everything that's visible. There's this link div, and then there's this little div. So when I styled this body, I basically said, okay, I want you to be like 45%. I want your width to be about 45% of the page. And then I want your left margin to be about, 30 or 25. I can't remember what the exact value was. And then I just adjusted it a little bit until it looked good. So margins are a really good way of, and then I think the top margin is maybe like 3%. So yeah, I talk about this. A good way of making sure that your website looks good on a bunch of different screens is using, do I talk about this? Yeah, I do. Is using relative rather than absolute units. So absolute units never change. So a centimeter is always a centimeter. A centimeter in Quebec is the same thing as a centimeter in France. A centimeter on the screen is the same thing as a centimeter somewhere else. The only problem, whereas something like an M, or usually you're going to be using M's or percentages. I almost only use percentages because an M is like 15 pixels, I think. Here, M to px. Yeah, 16 pixels is like okay, and you need to set a default pixel size. Yeah, I just use percentages because your pixel size also, it varies a bit depending on the display. I usually just use percentages. The upshot of a percentage is that if you're like, okay, I want this to take up half the page, so look at this. Look at that, it changes size. Whee! Woo! 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 Sorry, sound effects. That's what happens when you set things via percentages. This is always going to take up 45% of the page. Whereas if I'd set it to link div, where are you? Said margin left, and I said, oh, jokes, I actually didn't even set the link. Okay, yeah, it's just a big paragraph. So I set the paragraph size and not that, whatever. Whereas, okay, so if I set this width right here, instead of 90%, if I set it to something down like, okay, here I didn't even, sorry, I didn't actually style the, I'm gonna get rid of the margin right, and then I'm gonna give it a width of 30%, yeah. Okay, pretty much the same thing. And as we see, we can resize it, yeah. So if I now say, I don't want you to be 30%, I want you to be 500 pixels. And we didn't actually need to do that. When we resize, oh, it stays the same size. Less fun. So that's why I use percentages, because it's responsive, because it responds automatically to say 50%, say 20. Yeah, it's a bit wider, whatever. Yes, so these are all the units that you can use, and these are all the units that you can use. Pixels I usually use for text. So if you're setting font size, I would usually say like 60, if you're setting the font size, I would usually just set that in pixels because whatever, it's pretty intuitive. And margins and sizes, I usually set with percentages because they're responsive. So you can set, usually you don't set the size, you'll set the width and the height. Let's go back here. So display, nobody cares about inline. Nobody cares about inline. Block and flex. So basically when you put something on an HTML page, like when you're putting stuff on a page, they're going to appear one after the other, which is great because things just come one after the other. But if you want to place things side by side, that can get a bit tricky. And back in the old web, we didn't have flex boxes. We just had something that said, we just had float right and float left, and that was a pain in the ass. But now with flex boxes, basically you can just take a div. So I'll actually just go to my index because I put it in there. So I have a div, and this div holds both the Britney Spears lyrics and the picture of the hand. And here's the element with the lyrics, and here's the element with the hand. And in my style, so the div is the ID is same line, and I named it that because I wanted it to be on the same line. And then if I go to same line, I can see that my display is flex. And basically what this does is that I have a box, I have the div, which is a box, and then I have the two things inside that box, and they appear on the same line. And they do that because I told it to be a flex box. Whereas if I said display block, and I go back to my page, and I go back to my home page, all of a sudden everything sucks. All the elements are appearing as blocks, which is to say that they take up the entire row that they're on. I don't want that. I want flex. Super easy way of making things appear side by side. And then, you know, if you add another, if you add another thing to this, so also another thing, nice thing about Atom is that it's going to highlight the first and last tags that you're using. So if I want another thing to appear on that line, I just div size. Setting the size in here because I'm lazy. Actually, no. Third element. Empty div. But background color red. Oops. And now it's choosing to not appear for bloody whatever reason. Give me a color you appear. Okay. I don't know why it's being a pain in the ass. Usually that. Okay, don't ask me why it chose to ignore the size, but anyways, I've added a third element and it's there. And so that's an easy way of just putting things on the same line. And then there are a lot of ways of sort of styling flex boxes. So this is a basic kind of flex. You know, whether you want there to be an equal amount of space around each element or just space between the elements, whether you want to be able to put a lot of elements and just kind of have it align itself into a grid. All of this can be found inside this flex property, and then these basically set of instructions. So the info is all there, and this is a really good way to do it. Position. position is positioning. So position is just an attribute that you set if you want to be able to kind of like hyper customize things. So everything is, okay, I'm just gonna get rid of this ugly element. Everything is kind of gonna appear in the flow of the page. So in a block, unless you set it to position absolute. So if you set an element to, so for example, for same line, this is the whole div. I set it to position absolute because I wanted to be able to set its Z index. And what happens when you set something to position absolute is that it doesn't interrupt the flow of the page. So wherever you put it, the rest of the things on the page are going to kind of ignore it and just keep stacking themselves as they were before. Position fixed, and this is something, the reason I'm kind of speeding through this is because I gave this kind of positioning link, and it's the kind of thing that if I just yell at you about it, you're going to be like, I don't know what's going on. But once you actually start trying it out, it's going to make a lot more sense. Sticky is if you want something to appear on, I'm just going to go to the positioning actually, because they're going to explain it super well. Yeah. So yeah, static is just the normal thing. Static relative is relative, I don't really care about. Fixed and absolute are kind of the only ones that I usually use. So fixed is just, why did you even put it there if you're not going to let something scroll? Fixed is actually, I have a fixed element on my page. Actually, yeah, sorry. So this top bar is actually fixed. So when I scroll down, it stays. That's what it means when something is fixed. If something is sticky, imagine this thing, once it got to the top of the page, just stayed there. That would be something. I know that like imagining things is bad, but I don't feel like right. Actually, the sticky. Yeah, this one's good. So here we have a sticky div. So here the div is positioned about halfway down this box, but then you start scrolling, and all of a sudden it stays. So it's pretty much just fixed, but it'll move to the top of the page before it starts being fixed. And then, yeah, and then absolute is the main reason we would use absolute is if we want to position elements on top of each other. So when you want an image to appear on top of something else, what you do is you change its Z index. So is everyone familiar with kind of the XY of a graph? So Y is generally the vertical axis of a graph. X is the horizontal axis of a graph. So, you know, high school math, if you're plotting functions and stuff, you're plotting their X and Y. Z axis on a computer is kind of the, I guess, just the straight line. So if you want something to appear on top of something else, like for example on this page, on this page, I'm gonna get rid of this flex box because it's fucking me up. Stop. Can you go back to the way you were, please? Okay, I did something stupid to you. Anyways, this div has a Z index of like 3, and this has a Z index of like, actually, I'm just gonna, I did something dumb to the styling. Yeah, there we go. This div has a Z index of like 1, and this div has a Z index of like 3 or something. So because it's higher, it's closer to us. And the only way that I can get it to not just appear after the other stuff is by giving it position absolute. I see a really confused expression on Flora's face, and I'm wondering, is this making sense to anyone? And do you want a more concrete example?
I think an example might be nice. I'm a little confused.
Okay, so just gonna make a new page. So yeah, this is complex. it's a bit hard to wrap your head around initially. Do I have another? So. So yeah, what we have on this page, let's open this page in our live host. Okay, so we have hi and we have no, and let's just give hi a background color. So I called it whatever. Actually, let me give, oops. Give an ID 2. Okay, so what did I call you? I called you whatever. Okay, so there's, yeah, I'll give you some nice padding so that you're okay, so just setting that. Sometimes divs don't like height, so you just have to give them padding. Okay, so we have this div, and now this no is under hi. So because so yeah, let's just put a lot of space around them to differentiate them. So first, this is the first element on my page, and this is the second element on my page. And because they appear after each other in the, because they appear like, they appear after each other literally just so that without any positioning whatever, they won't all appear on top of each other. So that's just the way HTML works. It's like, well, we need to have some fail-safe in case people don't specify all of their positioning. The default positioning is just first thing on a page comes before, like first element, second element, third element, yada, 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 and onwards. And you saw before that the only way to get something on the same line as something else was to put it in a flexbox or something like that. So the automatic behavior is just one thing after another. Does this make sense so far? But if you want a nice cool effect, like an image kind of half floating on another image, what you need to do is you need to say, and that's just kind of known as the flow of the page. So the natural behavior of the page is just its flow. And if I put something in, like if I put something here now, P, it now appears above no. And there's no way, like there's, yeah, so that's just how you order things. You order things in the code. Like there's no point in positioning, like, yeah, if you're not positioning, I want this first, I want this second, I want this third. You're just writing them in that element in the code and they get positioned like that. But if you want something, if you want some more interesting, if you want to break that flow and say, I want this. Okay, so now what I'm going to do with P is I'm going to give it position absolute. Did I give you a name? Yeah, I said float. Okay, so float position absolute. All of a sudden, it is, did I delete the other element? Yeah, so right now it's still just in the flow of the page because I haven't told it to do anything else. But what I can do is, float is no, right? Yeah. I can say margin equals, okay, yeah. The Z index is, I'm going to give you, yeah. So I've given them both position absolute now. So they both think that they belong at the top right-hand corner of the page, which is not what I want. And oops. So now let's play with the Z index. So right now they're on the same Z index, but they're just kind of crowding each other. To play with this, I'm going to say, okay, Z index, Z index equals 0. And for you, I'm going to say Z index equals 3. All of a sudden, no disappears. Because does everyone see that no has disappeared? Because high is now on top of no. Because the Z index is higher. Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want, you know what, I'll give you a background color. Now I want high to be on top of no. So I'm going to say Z index 3 and Z index 0. And all of a sudden, no is going to be on top of high. And I can really play around with it now. And I can kind of, like, if some of your elements are in a flow and some of them are positioned absolutely, you may have to do some like positioning readjustment and it might be a bit annoying. But as long as you know that going in, you'll be prepared for it, as opposed to like you suddenly position something absolutely and everything fucks up and you're like, why did that happen? And now you can kind of just put it wherever you want. You can be like, okay, well, now I want float to kind of just be anywhere. I want its margin left to be, I don't know, a quarter of the way into the page. And I want its margin top to be about 10% down the page. And all of a sudden, it's moved around. It's moved right there. So that's how I position things. And things don't need to be absolute to be changed. It's just that so without position absolute, A, this wouldn't be able to float. This wouldn't be able to float on anything. And B, when I say 10%, it wouldn't be 10% of this page. It would be 10% of the page minus the area of this, kind of. So I'm going to take position absolute off. I'm going to take Z index off. I'm going to take position absolute off. And you're going to say that all of a sudden 10% is a slightly different. You fucking dumb. And now my browser is confused because it's like, oh, I have an absolutely positioned element and a non-absolutely positioned element, and I don't know what's going on, and I'm confused. There we go. Now all of a sudden 10% of the page is a little bit different. So yeah, so that's basic positioning. Unless you usually, I don't usually bother to set an absolute position for anything unless I want to change its Z index, unless I want to float it on top of other things. Because it does confuse the page a little bit, but it is a really useful property, and it does give you quite a bit of control vis-a-vis positioning everything. But other than that, I just position things with margins. So I usually just say like margin left 25, margin top 10. So right, yeah. So that gives me that. It will also give you width of 10% because you're pretty big right now. Yeah. So this width is now 10% of the page, and I want it to be, if I don't give it any top margin, it's just going to appear right under there. And if I don't give it, if I give it like a, if I give it a right margin, so you can do anything. Right. Sometimes it doesn't care. Margin right. Yeah, so usually you have to style things. Usually you have to style things from the left. So I've told it to give it a 10% right margin. That's not going to affect it unless it's so big here. I'm going to make its width 100% now. Right margin of 10%. Hello. Hmm. There we go. Now it's being affected. So that's 20% of a margin, and it's only because it would otherwise be the entire length of something. But to position it, you really want to think. So right and bottom margins only really affect the size of something. Left and top margins will affect its position. So margin right, yeah, margin left equals, yeah, let's give it a 15% one. And now those. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Yeah. So these are other positioning properties that's under this tab. Other positioning properties, and these are just kind of, yeah, yeah, these are other, do you want me to go through these, or do you want to like explore a little bit by yourself, or? Yeah, I planned a little break here. I think we need a break, so yeah, I'm just going to briefly explain what these do. Animations, you can do CSS animations. Grids are just for making easy grids. Transforms, this is actually cool. I'm going to go. I'm going to go here. He can make sure to do this. Yay. Okay. Animations, overflow is like if you have a div that you want to keep one size and not adapt to its contents, you want to give it a little scroll bar, you just set the overflow. Yay. So you can give divs little scroll bars. Writing modes. This is cool. Oops. Flora's gonna like this actually. Changing the writing mode basically means you can write vertically and stuff like that. And you can like affect this with a span too. Z-index I just showed you. Filters you can apply like kind of like Photoshop sort of. So there are different filters that you can apply. You can apply blur, brightness, contrast, drop shadow, etc. So these are actually ways that you can affect an image just using CSS, like without processing it with Photoshop or anything. Box shadows, it's just a little shadow underneath that. So if you want to give something a little shadow, give it a little 3D effect. You can also do this with text directly. So like, sorry to be bringing it my own website again, but like all of these, this little kind of outline outside the, yeah, the like yellow outline around the text is actually just done with a box shadow because there's no outline property. There's an underline property, but no outline property. Overflow grids, yeah, whatever. So let's take a break. And if you want to experiment with some CSS, you can. And if you don't want to experiment with any CSS, you can do it tomorrow or something, because I get that that was a lot. CSS can be confusing. Remember, so much reference out there. Like at the drop of a hat, you can just Google something and you'll learn how to do it. And yeah, so if you want to try like applying some colors to, if you put any text on your page and you want to try like applying some colors or applying some backgrounds or whatever, you can play with that now. If you want to just like drink some water and like do a cartwheel, you can also do that. And let's take a little break. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to run over a tiny bit just to let anybody who's sticking around that we're taking a break, but I think after that we only have like a 10-minute little thing. Very brief, if I'm right, Jules.
Flora, what'd you say?
Oh, I was just saying, can you hear me?
Your volume was a bit garbled, but yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. No, I was just saying for everybody who's sticking around, we're slightly going over time, but I think that what you have planned after the break is like very quick, and it's like more
5 minutes and it's essential.
Hmm?
It'll take 5 minutes and it's 100% essential. So
yeah. So it's just if you're wondering
people aren't like
whether if you want to stick around or not, that might be a good information. But I'm gonna take a, should we say 15 or 10? 15?
Well, why don't we actually just take a short 10? Because what I'm doing after the break is literally so short.
Okay.
And yeah, get something to drink, and then I'm just gonna teach you how to link your domain name to your host. Yeah, I'm sorry we went a bit over. There's like CSS is big, and I wanted to like make sure you guys understood kind of like what the possibilities were. But I get that it's a lot. But yeah, let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Thanks, Jules.
You guys are big troopers. I promise this will be fast. Yeah. Okay. So, I'm sorry about how long that CSS part was. Actually, I'm sorry. Yeah. When Flora and I were planning this out, we were like, yeah, this will take like 15 minutes to explain. An hour or so. You start talking and you're like, oh, you know. This is ironically, okay, so CSS HTML, I know that I talked a lot and it was like, but as soon as you start doing it, you'll get the hang of it super, super fast. And like web references will like be super helpful and like a great resource. Like, I'll be there, and the web is always like an amazing resource. Like I said, I still Google everything I do all the time. Deploying, like linking your domain name is ironically the kind of thing that like is not always so intuitive. Like you'll Google it and you'll read a whole page and you'll be like, I still don't know what you're talking about. So this is the kind of thing that it takes literally to, like HTML, CSS, you're going to be like playing around with it a lot and you're going to be a bit frustrated, but it's going to be fun because you're going to be making cool stuff. Whereas this is kind of like, it's like, just show me and get it over with. And like the documentation online is kind of like, it's annoying to read. It's just a lot of text for what should just be a bunch of images. Okay, so yes, so in your, so I've made a few screenshots here. So basically in your Netlify, you have a little thing called you have your little domain tab. So yeah, so you have your domain tab, and then I have 2 domains. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to this add or register domain button. So this button right here, you're going to click it, and then you're going to type in the domain name that you bought. Yeah, so you're going to type in your new domain name, and then if you've already bought it, it's going to ask if you own it, and you're going to say, yes, I own this. Yeah, so you're going to say, yes, I own this. Don't try to take someone else's domain because you're not going to be able to connect it at the other end and it's going to get confusing. This is not the only step, unfortunately. So you're going to say, yes, I own this domain. And then it's going to ask you to add the DNS records. You don't need to do this. So just hit continue. The DNS record is something that Netlify creates automatically for you, unless you want to like hook up an email, which you don't right now. So you're going to just hit continue. And then it's going to ask you to update your domain's name servers. So these four addresses are the name servers for the build that you have published. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to...
I'm sorry, I'm just interrupting you really quickly. I'm not sure why, but your sound's not super loud. I can't hear you super well.
If I yell, is it better? Did you guys hear what I said previously here? I didn't say anything too important. I just basically editorialized everywhere the little guy, just click on everywhere the little guy is in these. So yeah, just add your domain, click yes, add domain, then continue. Don't click this, click this. And then it's going to bring you to name servers. So these name servers are basically just the servers that your site is hosted on. And yeah, so I would just keep this window. So basically this is going to like, it's going to leave you. No, I don't want that. Yeah, I'm actually, sorry, I did this before. Ad lucem. So what it's going to do is it's gonna sorry, yeah, if you just click on, if you've already done this step and you just click on your domain, it's gonna show you your name servers here. So these are your 4 name servers. And then just keep this open in one tab. And then, so I have one domain with Epic and I have one domain with Uniregistry. So I'm going to show you Epic first, just in case that's where you bought it. Please don't log me out. Why? God. So if you bought it with Epic, it's going to be basically the same thing wherever you bought it. Go away. It's going to be basically the same thing wherever you bought it. I'm just going to show you just in case, because sometimes it's a bit annoying to find. So here is my domain, and yeah, so you're just going to click on whatever brings you to the domain. No, oh my God, stop. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, so you're going to click on this little info if you're in Epic. Click on this little info, and you're going to click on set name servers. I've already set the name servers for this, but basically you're going to get a list that looks like this. You might only have like 2, in which case you're just going to click add name server, and you're going to add for it. So you just add, and then you're going to, so imagine that these weren't already what I wanted them to be. I would just click on this, add that, save changes. Oh my God, that's actually gonna fuck me up. Actually want to delete this. Yeah, that's cool. So you're just going to add 4 name servers, and you're going to make them, and you're going to add, so this is going to be your first, this is going to be your second, this is going to be your third, this is going to be your fourth. And each time you're just going to click add name server. So that's how you do it in Epic. And then once you've added all 4, you're just going to hit save changes. And it might take up to a day for your site to actually link, but that's how you do it. It's as simple as that. So whatever registry you're in, you're just going to look for where you update your name servers, and you're just going to add those 4 addresses. So let's just go to Uniregistry. It's a bit easier in Uniregistry, actually. Can you guys just remember when I've logged in? Okay, again. I go to my domain. And then I go to ns/DNS, means name server / domain name server. Name servers. So if I wanted to go, if I wanted to, so yeah, these are all the name servers I've already, oh, have I? No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Change your account default name servers here. Yeah, yes. So I go here. I actually didn't because I wanted to do it with you guys. So I go to edit. So now I'm just going to copy paste them one by one. Add. 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 And then I save and close. Yeah. Yeah. So that should transfer my site over. Sometimes I'll get a little email telling me that my domain's been updated. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Your registry password, whatever, it'll probably send me an email later. Yeah, it's as simple as that. So you just update your name servers, and then you wait for it to update. That's literally it. That's all you have to do. Does that make sense?
Wait, so to put your page online, you can't just simply upload the files like you showed us at the beginning to...
No. So yeah, so that's your host.
Yeah.
So this website is hosting your files. And then you're pointing your domain name. So you bought florafauna.world from Uniregistry. Yeah?
Yeah, something almost that, but doesn't really matter.
Or something of that nature.
Yeah.
So what you're going to, so you own that. So you're going to go to, let's just go back to image. So right here where it says ad lucem, it's going to say flora fauna. So you're going to click on it. And you're going to go to name and DNS. And you are going to go to, sorry, yeah, you're going to go to set new name servers. Got it, thank you. Sorry, I actually did it.
Oh, I see. So you're getting, Netlify is making the server name.
So Netlify makes
okay.
the name servers, and then you're going to add them to your Uniregistry so that your Uniregistry knows to look to your Netlify for the content that it needs to point to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
that's clear now.
And then so you're just going to go to your NS, DNS, and I can take screenshots of this process and add them to the presentation that everyone has access to. And I'm just going to save your changes. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, so this is basically just an address, and it needs to know what to refer to get the content. And the way it knows what to refer to is just through these name servers. So once again, you just click on it, and then you go to NS, DNS, and then you go to change your account default name servers here, and then it will prompt you it'll prompt you with like 4 name servers or something, and then you just copy paste them one after the other in there. And then your site should be linked up. Once again, it might not be immediate. It might take like a day or so sometimes for it to, a day or so if it's like a big site, but usually if it's a small site, it only takes a few hours. Yeah, that's it. That's like everyone's brain is probably absolute mush by now. I'm very sorry. But yeah, that's like, and if you're having trouble finding stuff later on, don't hesitate to like give me a shout, and we can like get on video and I can help you find it. But yeah, it is as simple as that, and I'm going to add some screenshots to the presentation so that everyone can kind of see the process after that. But yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I just wanted to add super quickly, I won't take too much time just because it's been a long time, but thanks for sticking out. Just in terms of the site spiral, we're gonna, one thing that I forgot to mention is that you need, but it's in the call app, but you will send out basically a navigation banner. Yeah. I don't know how to call this, to everybody so that they can just like integrate it into their page. And that's going to come in the few, like, I guess like in the next couple of weeks probably. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's it. Everything else, I think, hopefully this covered enough that you can go back to it, and it's going to be recorded. So if you miss something, because, you know, you just like couldn't focus for 3 hours, which is super normal, don't worry about it. It's going to be available online. And again, thank you so much, Jules. That was great.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I said, it's a lot, like, information presented on Zoom is annoying, but like I said, if it helps, just get off the computer, like sketch out what you want a site to look like, or cut out, collage what you want a site to look like, and then start playing around with your HTML and your CSS. And as soon as you get stuff working and start seeing stuff work, it's going to create It's going to create a better dopamine feedback loop than Instagram. I can assure you of that. You're going to be like, hi, it works. Hi, it's blue. Hi, it's over here. Hi, it floats. So yeah, listen to some nice music and just like play around with stuff. And I hope you guys have fun with it. And if you want to if something isn't working, first things first, walk away from the computer and like take a deep breath and like just take a break, because chances are when you come back, you'll come back and you'll be like, oh, I missed a semicolon or something like that, and just play around. And if it's an issue that you really can't fix just by like finding the code, just like, yeah, send me a message and we can try to figure it out. Yeah, I hope you guys have fun.
Unless anybody has any questions, I think we're gonna end the meeting, so you can all go feed yourself and live your life. Yes, we will. So I'm not sure sorry, somebody is asking if we can let everybody know when the recording's up. We're gonna post it on the Facebook event, I think. Like we'll post a link, and then like on other social media platforms. But if that's not, you're not like present there, or like for any reason, you can also email us at fsa.concordia@gmail.com and we'll send you the link, even though it might take a few days because we don't always check the emails. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. This was super nice. And yeah, hope to see you in the site spiral.
Thank you so much, Flora and Jules, for setting this up. It's really, really helpful.
Thank you. Thanks, Jules. I hope you're like alive.
Energized.
Such a long time to talk. I can't believe it.
I'm actually a lot. No, it's like I'm a lot more energized. I feel like if I had just listened to that, I would like be feeling dead. But I'm feeling great. Yeah.
Okay, fun. Yeah, you looked like you were super in your element. I was like, this is great. I'm gonna have to